Pay our respects to elders past and present and their descendants. I'd also like to add, this evening we're here at the City of Swan Council Chamber where we meet democratically and peacefully to govern. We might not always agree with each other, but we're all given the opportunity to have our voice heard. Last week, the Australian Parliament invited the Ukraine President to speak to all members from both houses. It brought into sharp focus how fragile peace, democracy and basic human rights are. It's a reminder to us all just how lucky we are to be in Australia. We're in a great state that has great wealth and prosperity, and we live in a city that provides a safe and welcoming community from many people from around the world, including people who may have left a violent homeland. Tonight, I wish to acknowledge the heartache, devastation and destruction that the Ukrainian people are facing. I must also acknowledge their strength, resilience and fortitude as a nation, standing strong against such a senseless war of violence. I'd also like to acknowledge Ukrainians living in Australia, and particularly those living in the City of Swan, who have loved ones caught up in the war and violence. Words seem trivial at this time, but please know that our thoughts are with them and their families. Thank you. I'd like to now read the disclaimer, item 2 on the agenda. The City of Swan disclaims any liability from any loss arising from any person or body on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Where an application for an approval, a licence or the like is considered or determined during this meeting, the City warns that neither the applicant nor any other person or body should rely upon that discussion or determination until written notice of either an approval and the conditions which relate to it or the refusal of the application has been issued by the City. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the Council website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time or public statement time, it is assumed your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council or other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured, and the conditions of entry is no electronic, visual or audio recording or transmitting device or instrument is permitted to be used. A person who breaches this provision of the City of Swan Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019 will be required to immediately leave the premises. Item 3, attendance and apologies. I believe all councillors are in attendance, Mr CEO, and I believe Mr Bishop's attending by Zoom. Is that correct?
Yeah, Ms Pickering as well.
And Ms Pickering. Thank you. Item 4, declarations of financial and proximity interests and interests affecting impartiality. Thank you, Mr CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just have one additional one from the agenda forum from last week, and that's from Councillor Johnson. It's in relation to item 4.11 on the agenda, the proposed demolition of single house and removal of native vegetation, lots 33 and 34, number 7 Fauntleroy Street in Guildford, DA 1069 of 21. It is an interest of impartiality, and the reason is live nearby, no former owners. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors or staff? Then moving on to the next item. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones. I've got one on item C 3.1, community care. Yes, that's in the run sheet. Thank you. Item 5, public question time. Questions and answers recorded in the minutes of the meeting may be summarised in accordance with the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. Questions and answers marked with an asterisk have been amended either for the purpose of summarising or removing preambles or statements or for editing purposes. Item 5.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice, and there were questions from the ordinary council meeting held on the 2nd of March 2020 from Miss Leah Bowden and Miss Ebony McKay, and they were included in the agenda. Item 5.2, questions relating to reports contained in the agenda, and 5.2.1, questions of which due notice has been given. There's a number of questions from Mr Patrick Irwin, and they have been answered. Is Mr Irwin here? No. 5.2.2, questions taken without due notice. Ms Meryl Cruikshank asked 7 questions, and they have been answered. Is Ms Cruikshank here? No. I'll now ask if there's any members in the public who wish to ask a question on an item on the agenda. No one so indicated, so we'll move to item 5.3, other questions, and 5.3.1, questions of which due notice have been given. There's a question by Mr Mark Church about the guardhouse in the Vines, and that question has been taken on notice by the CEO. Mr Bob Baku has answered a number of questions, and I believe all those have been answered. Is Mr Baku in the gallery? No. Dr Marilena Stempfel asked 5 questions. Is Dr Stempfel in the audience? You've seen those answers, Dr Stempfel? Okay then, thank you. I'll keep moving on, but if anything arises, if you can let us know in due course. Mr Robert Ilchik asked 3 questions. I believe 2 have been answered, and question 2 has been answered. Question 1 and 3 have been taken on notice. Mr Simon Ashby asked 6 questions, and they've been answered. Is Mr Ashby in the gallery? No. Questions 5.3.2, questions without due notice. Mr Kevin Bailey asked 5 questions, and they've been answered. Is there any member in the public gallery who wishes to ask a question of a general matter not contained within the agenda? Being no response from members in the gallery, we'll now move to item 6, which is public statement time. And registrations for public statement time at council meetings was required by 3 p.m. Tuesday the 5th of April. 1 person is registered to make a public statement. Public statements are limited to 2 minutes. So it's item 6.1. I now invite Mrs Christine Hughes to come to the podium. If you can turn your microphone on, thank you, Christine, and you'll have 2 minutes in which to make your public statement. Thank you. On tree canopy.
Thank you. Councillors, 2020 marks 70 years on the throne of Queen Elizabeth II, known as her Platinum Jubilee. Various federal members, Pearce, Swan and Hasluck, currently have grants of up to $25,000 available for plantings for this anniversary, framed around commemorative street avenues. It closes on the 4th of May, and I'd urge you all to try and grab some. City of Swan has got a very low tree canopy count. In 2018, it was assessed as having 14% coverage, and by 2020 that had dropped to 12%. The Department of Planning with the CSIRO has produced an interactive maps of tree cover and related average land surface temperature. Swan is at the top of the table for the highest land temperature by metropolitan LGA at 41 degrees. By contrast, Armidale is 33 degrees, Kalamunda 34. This joint CSIRO survey notes that these average land surface temperatures can vary up to 9 degrees, and in large part they are in direct correlation to canopy cover. In 2018, Walga reported that the biggest threat to canopy cover was infill development, and cited by example the City of Stirling, which had in the 5 years 2013 to 18 lost more than 1 million square metres of tree cover, 3/4 of which was from private land. Councillors, we're doing reasonably well in parks, growing in parks, but on roads and in private land, including commercial, residential and industrial, we're doing very badly.
You have 30 seconds left, thank you.
A couple of Gidgee at the top with 27%, which is brilliant in the private land. Averley at 2%, Balladura 7%, Beechworth 7%, Ellenbrook 3%. Whiteman 4% and Malaga, which is largely industrial, 1%. I think we can do better, councillors. Why not grab some of that federal money while the lid to the trough is off?
Thank you very much for your deputation, a public statement. Takes us to item 7, petitions, and I have 2 people registered to make a petition. And 7.1 is a petition containing a number of signatures in regards to item 4.8, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and new replacement dwelling in Mears Street, Guildford, in support of the application, as to be presented by Mrs Michaela Trelin. Thank you. If you can come to the microphone, you have 2 minutes to present your petition and make any accompanying statement. Thank you.
Okay, thanks again for the opportunity to speak to you in support of our application. Since our deputation last week, we have obtained the signatures of 12 of our adjoining neighbours, confirming their support for our proposed application at 2 Mears Street, Guildford. As detailed in the council report by the planning officer, the proposal is entirely compliant with the overarching planning framework. We do respectfully request that the council reconsider the officer's recommendation and alternatively approve the application in its current form, as we firmly believe that the proposed average setback of 6 metres, compliant with the R codes, does not adversely impact the existing streetscape, nor set a precedent for future development in the area. The operative Guildford Conservation Precinct policy does not stipulate a specific street setback, and instead indicates that regard should be given to the streetscape, which believe has been done. The officer's assessment of the existing streetscape has incorrectly only had regard to the 2 adjoining properties to the north of our site, instead of the entire Mears Street and adjoining properties on Victoria and Market Street, where the building setbacks vary greatly. We would like you to consider the context of the entire street and surrounding area, including the setbacks of immediate properties. A plan has been prepared to provide a visual demonstration of the surrounding context, including existing setbacks as presented at the briefing session last week. We consider that the proposal provides an appropriate graduation of the front setbacks between the property to the north and the existing shed to the south. As you can see in the photos, the existing shed on the corner of Victoria and Mears Street, directly adjacent to our property, has a setback of only 1 metre from Mears Street, and it essentially blocks any sightline to our property when approaching from Victoria Street. We therefore request that the proposal is supported by Council as it is currently proposed. The siting of the proposed dwelling and its associated front setbacks do not have an adverse impact on the streetscape and have been carefully considered with regard to all surrounding setbacks and existing development. Thanks again for your time this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. So move Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Zanino, and that's to the recommendation on page 11 of your run sheet, that the Council resolve to 1, that the above petition be considered as a submission on item 4.8, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and a new replacement dwelling at Lot 4, Mears Street, Guildford. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried unanimously. Takes us to item 7.2, a petition containing a number of signatures requesting closure of a laneway that connects Gumnut Close and Miles Road in Swan View, and that will be presented by Mr Luke Hutchinson. Thank you, Luke. If you make your way to the microphone, you can present your petition, and you have 2 minutes to talk to it. Thank you.
Mayor, councillors, I want to respectfully present to you tonight a petition to close the laneway between Gumnut Close and Miles Road in Swanview. I want to start by saying that that was not my first approach. I initially approached my neighbours, Peter, who's joined me tonight, Joe, Nick and Ebony, about potentially improving the amenity of the laneway to deter the illegal dumping of rubbish and the antisocial behaviour I was aware of. The problem that occurred is that in those conversations, I found out there's more going on in that laneway than I ever possibly could have imagined. I've documented that for you, just the recent stuff, there's more. In the last 24 months, I've got 17 examples ranging from stolen motorbikes dumped and set on fire, multiple burglaries that have been perpetrated or attempted using the laneway as egress or access. It's a chosen go-to for petty theft because the police can't chase people down the laneway in a car. We've got homeless people that are sleeping rough. We've got trail bikes going up and down. Every house that shares a border with the laneway has had its windows smashed at least once, if not multiple times. Fence panels have been kicked in, and the bollards that belong to council, which are metal, have been damaged and cut off. There's more. I've got 3 pages of photographic evidence to support, but needless to say, it's not good. That laneway provides amenity. I take it in the morning to go get a coffee and it saves me a minute or two. But I can't say that that shortcut is worth putting Peter's family at risk, or Ebony's family at risk, or Joe's family, anyone's family. So I'm going to urge you tonight to give the petition the consideration that it deserves. This isn't just close the laneway because we don't like it. It's close the laneway because we've had significant events that are threatening public safety and the laneway is contributing to. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the petition, and I'll do so now. Thank you.
Thank you. If you're not aware, Luke, there is a legal process to go through, and on page 12, councillors, there's a recommendation. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Thank you. Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Howlett, that the council resolve to the petition be referred to the Chief Executive Officer for consideration and response, and we'll get back to you on that legal process and give you advice in due course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other petitions to be submitted by members of the public? Being no other petitions, that takes us to item 8, deputations, and deputations were held at last week's agenda forum, Wednesday the 30th of March, which takes us to item 9, announcements by the presiding member, and I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Congdon. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors and Mayor, I'm pleased to announce that the City of Swan has won 3 awards at the IPWI WA Awards of Excellence held on Friday, March 11th, 2022. The city's Midvale Skate Park was awarded Best Public Works Project under $2 million in the metropolitan area, and recently opened Malaga Recycling Centre, which I go to a lot, won the Best Public Works Project between $2 and $5 million in the metropolitan area. In addition, the city's Coordinator of Waste Services, Mr Matthew Southern, was also named as Emerging Young Leader in Western Australia for his excellence, leadership and contribution to the community within the public works field. These awards are a testament to the city's commitment to delivering quality facilities for our community, and are a credit to the city staff and councillors for their hard work and outstanding outcomes. This is the 4th year in a row the City of Swan employee has won or been finalist in the IPWI Emerging Young Leader Awards, which is a reflection on the success of the city's staff development programs. I would like to congratulate everyone involved in these projects and for the tremendous achievements. And there is that one and this one. So, oops, there we are. I don't want to drop them and break them, but there we are. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes, congratulations to our Executive Manager Operations, Jim Coaten, and his team of fine workers. Well done, Jim. That takes us to item 10, councillors, members' questions, and 10.1, answers to questions which were taken on notice. There were nil. And 10.2, questions of which due notice has been given. Councillor Johnson, I think you had roughly 20 questions. Have you seen those answers or anything that arise out of them? You have to turn your microphone off. Anything arise?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Takes us to item 11, leave of absence. I'll read it out. I've got the run sheet. I'm seeking leave of absence, councillors, from the 15th of May to the 24th of May inclusive, and the 27th of June to the 17th of August inclusive. And you've got
Just a further one, Mr Mayor, from Councillor Jones, from the 14th to the 24th of April inclusive as well.
Any more councillors? Councillor Catalano?
From the 14th to the 19th of May, thank you.
Thank you. Can you fill out the appropriate form in due course and submit
yes,
it?
No worries.
Thank you. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder. Move Councillor Zanino, seconded Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare those leave of absence as approved. Moving on to item 12, confirmation of the minutes. You'll note on pages 17 and 18 there are some corrections to the minutes, councillors. So the information included wasn't correct, so I need a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the last meeting. Thank you, as provided. So moved Councillor Kiley, seconded Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I'll declare that carried, which takes us to item 13, any business left over from the previous meeting. Councillor Parry.
Mr Mayor, I wish to move a motion to, in accordance with Part 11 of the Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, suspend Clause 6.6, duration of speeches for the duration of the ordinary council meeting of 6 April 22, including any agenda and reconvene meeting, and note where a provision of local law has been suspended, the presiding member is to decide questions relating to the conduct of the meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Sorry. I'm not sure. What are you doing? You're suspending? Yes, I'm waiting.
I wish to reduce the time to 3 minutes for each item, please, or each debate.
Thank you. I've got a mover. Do I have a seconder?
Question, Mr Mayor. I understand it's...
Well, let me get a seconder first. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Seconded Councillor Prodovnik. Now you can ask your question.
Question, Mr Mayor. Councillor Parry says he wants it to reduce it to 3 minutes, but I understand that we can't actually put that in the motion. So it's up to your discretion. So what's your plan?
Ms Albrecht, I just need your advice on that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, that can't form part of the motion. So what the council can do is it can suspend that clause of the meeting procedure local law, which will mean that you will decide questions relating to the duration of speeches, so you can determine what length speeches during debate are.
Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. We'll just need to amend that to remove the... It's not in there, it's a procedural motion. 3 minutes isn't listed in there. So have a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone against?
Question. So the question is, Mr
Councillor
Mayor,
Johnson.
what's the effect in terms of what are you going to do?
I've given this some consideration, Councillor Johnson, and my decision is that all speakers, being the mover, seconder, anyone speaking for or against the motion and the right to reply, will be limited to 3 minutes. And I'll just give you the rationale. I know you are trying to get a longer period of time for the mover to speak, but under our current meeting procedures, all councillors have the right of a 5 minute time in debate, including the 3 minutes right of reply afforded to the mover to respond to those arguments. So everyone has an equal share. So if I'm going to limit it to 3 minutes, I'm going to limit it to 3 minutes to everyone, bearing in mind that the mover of the motion will still have 3 minutes for a right of reply, so they'll have 6 minutes of speech time. So to try and get through the agenda we have tonight and be fair to every councillor, my intention is to limit all councillors to 3 minutes. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. So I'm now going to put the motion of Councillor Parry. Those in favour?
Didn't ask if anyone was opposed.
Well, I did ask if anyone was...
No, you didn't.
Okay, is anyone opposed?
Yes, I am actually.
Okay, well, being a procedural motion, we put it straight to the vote. There is no debate. I'll just check with the Governance Office, but that's my understanding. Excuse me, Ms Albrecht, being a procedural motion, it's debated, or does it be put straight to the vote?
For the suspension of a meeting procedure, there's no debate.
Thank you. I'll now put it straight to the vote. Those councillors in favour? I've Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch, with 2 against, being Councillor Johnson and Councillor Catalano. The motion is passed. Thank you. Takes us to the next item, is 13.7, Kings Meadow Foreshore, Guildford. It's on page 15, a proposed motion by Councillor Johnson. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr
You
Mayor.
have 3 minutes.
My motion is that Council resolve to undertake public consultation with the residents, ratepayers and electors of Guildford and the City of Swan and other users of the Kings Meadow Park to obtain their input and feedback on the options for the Kings Meadow Park foreshore, including option 1, do nothing, Option 2, review of managed retreat option with master plan. Option 3, sheep pile wall engineering like-for-like replacement with modern construction methods. Option 4, the previous master plan. E, and any other options the community wish to propose. 2, to report back to council with a recommendation. And 3, to record the reasons for changing the officer recommendation are that 1, previous community consultation was done some years ago and a way forward agreed for what was seen as a simple sheep pile solution. The community has patiently waited 6 years for their chosen solution to be delivered. And 3, before council changes the selected foreshore option, the community should be given the opportunity to have their say.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Richardson. Is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it, Councillor Kiley?
Well, I've got an alternative now. I don't know if I
Well,
want to debate it, but if we have to.
I'm asking you the question. Do you wish to debate it or not?
Yes.
Thank you. You've got 3 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, the master plan for this came up 6 years ago at the second briefing I attended as a newly elected councillor. The master plan was quite grand. It had a new car park, it had a jetty, it had a swimming beach, it had a playground. There were numerous other features which were quite surprising to me. It went out to consultation and nobody liked it, and we settled on what was seen at the time, that is the community settled on what was seen at the time, as a low-cost sheep pile solution with minimal changes to the area. The reason being that visitors and residents liked it as it is. They liked that beautiful open view over the Swan River. The master plan was scrapped. Every year since the plan for the foreshore was finalised and put onto the long-term capital works budget, I've had an email from local resident Mr Lee Rossetti asking about the progress, and every year I've said it will happen in financial year 2022-2023. Well, it's nearly on us. Councillors, if we're going to change the plan from the one the community have agreed with City and Council, we should go back to public consultation with the residents, ratepayers and electors of Guildford and the City of Swan and other users of the Kings Meadow Park to obtain their input and feedback on the options for the Kings Meadow Park foreshore. That's the reason for the motion. As we've waited all these years and changed the plan at the last minute, we just need to confirm with the community what they want. If they want to go down the DBCA managed retreat approach, well, that's fine by me. But let's hear from the community. After all, it's their park, not ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Richardson as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Prior to being a new councillor, I had only had one session in council to discuss a Kings Meadow Reserve, but we also had one site visit recently in order to speak to staff at the site. We also had visitors last week come to council and speak about how they would like to be included as new residents in Guildford. So if I had only been to one session and one site visit, then I can imagine that there would be other community members who have been following this for a long time who would also like to be included in an updated report. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, I also agree with Councillor Johnson. We do need to go back to the community with a plan. And the plan that I propose, however, on the next page as an alternative motion, suggests that we go to the DBCA and coordinate a plan with them, staff and DBCA members, come up with a plan which would be have the best costing outcome. We could get the best financial outcome through working with the DBCA, who said that they would be prepared to fund a project which would see an environmental treatment of the area rather than a sheet wall, which, as the Councillor Johnson's motion points out, it's a like-for-like replacement. Effectively, we're putting the same problem back into the same area. So I would rather go with a DBCA solution and then go back to the community and see what they think then. But the benefit of that is that we would get a much better funding arrangement through DBCA and potentially with state government entities as well. So please reject Councillor Johnson's motion and go with a DBCA funded motion as I've put forward on the following page. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers against them?
I've got a question.
A question, Councillor Catalano.
What chances or what's the possibility of actually putting these items or what Councillor Kiely is talking about with the Department of Biodiversity and also trying to attract funding, why can't we put that in with this current motion as an amendment?
They won't fund the sheep wall.
Mr Coaten.
Yeah, through you. Through you, Mr Mayor. The DBCA have indicated that they won't fund a sheep pile wall. They would look at funding for natural solutions, but not for a hard-engineered solution.
Thank you.
But this could still... I know it's just one option, isn't it? The sheep pile wall. There's other options. I mean, couldn't this be like just something that we do as well?
Well, there's 4 options in Councillor Johnson's motion. Or 5, actually.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. I think if Councillor Catalano is asking, can we adopt Councillor Johnson's motion and also at the same time to talk to the DBCA about the option of funding, which I think is the question, and the answer to that is yes, we can.
Well then, can I make that amendment and have that those questions to DBCA and questions about what would be the best thing, funding, preference for treatment? Could that not be then? Can I have that added to this?
Well, if you wish to make an amendment...
I do, yes.
What's your amendment, thank you, Councillor Catalano?
Well, my amendment is that the Council speak to the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions to seek their expert guidance to work with the City of Swan staff to achieve the best environmental, cultural and foreshore restoration outcomes. And then number 2, as soon as possible, determine the funding contribution the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions would commit, the recommended plan, and then report this back to Council. And I don't think that contradicts. That can be part of the reporting back to Council and in the alternative motion, Councillor Johnson's alternative motion. That can be a second part of the reporting back to Council.
Is that agreeable by the mover and the seconder?
Sorry, there was another point which was specify that the Council's preference is for a treatment that would still permit recreational fishing, boating and enjoyment of the river foreshore, and such a treatment that would prevent the substantial erosion of the existing foreshore, which was actually the third point in Councillor Kiely's.
That's still agreeable to the mover and the seconder? It's agreeable by the mover and the seconder, so I'm prepared to make it part of the substantive motion, councillors, if there's no one against.
I am against.
No, he's not. So you wish to debate it, Councillor Kiely?
Yes, please.
I'll second the
Oh,
amendment.
sorry.
Thank you. I've got a mover in Councillor Catalano, a seconder in Councillor Bowman. Councillor Kiely is against and wishes to debate it. So we're just debating the amendment. So it's your amendment, Councillor Catalano. Do you wish to start the debate? You have 3 minutes if you wish to do so.
Yes, okay, thank you. Well, it seems quite a reasonable thing to actually seek DBCA's input into this. I've got to say I do actually have some concerns with the sheep pile wall option, and I would definitely like to hear what DBCA have got to say about it. And also the idea that they would fund something towards the foreshore restoration, I think is a really good idea. I mean, the river is enjoyed by more people than just City of Swan ratepayers and residents, more than Guildford residents and ratepayers. And I think the state government is in some ways responsible for the erosion of the river because they allow the speeding of boats down there all over the weekend and, quite often during the week, and it's that contributes to the erosion. So therefore, until they address the issue of speedboats on the river and that kind of traffic on the river, then I think it needs to go back to state government, and that needs to be made clear to them as well. So the reason I thought, well, you know, I like the idea of public consultation, further public consultation, but we need to have the full picture. We need to have the state government's involvement in this, at least DBCA's. We need to be able to come to something that doesn't cost the City of Swan a fortune, when effectively it's not the City of Swan's issue. It's not the City of Swan that's causing it. It's actually those boats that absolutely tear up and down the river, and that's something we need to make the DBCA aware of as well. And I don't think our ratepayers need to be constantly funding these works. So that's why I think it's great to bring the two of them together, and let's just have a total kind of holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman is the second to the amendment.
Mr Mayor, just quickly, I agree with Councillor Catalano. Great amendment. It's bringing the two ideas from Councillor Johnson and Councillor Kiley together. Why wouldn't we add to that? And as such, I support the amendment.
Thank you. Speaker against the amendment, Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, this was deferred at the last council meeting or the one before. We had a meeting on site with the DBCA and the consultants. We ascertained at that site meeting that they would only support one option. That's an environmental treatment of the area. I don't want to be throwing everything back in the mix again, going out to community consultation on everything, every possible scenario, which is what we're ending up here with this amendment and this motion. Councillor Catalano's taken a substantial piece of my motion and put forward for this amendment. But what we can hone down is the fact that DBCA will only fund an environmental treatment of the area. Let's just go forward with that. That's the best outcome for the city, for the ratepayers. We are looking at an exorbitant cost to fund this little tiny area of Guildford for the sake of some tiny piece of the river foreshore at a huge cost to the ratepayers. Whereas if we go forward with a DBCA coordinated approach only, then we get a much better outcome financially for the city. It's a tiny area. Let's not go waste ratepayers' money on putting everything back out there again and taking probably another 2, maybe 3 years before we get back to where we're basically at right now. So please do not support this motion. Go with the alternative there, which is going forward with an environmental treatment of the area, and then which would be funded in a large part by DBCA. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, Mr Mayor, I like the idea of including his ideas from Councillor Kiley's motion. Look, it was never my intention to exclude the DBCA from this. I thought that option 2, review of managed retreat option with master plan, implicitly included the DBCA's outline proposal. So I'm quite happy to include that. I think it would be good. I definitely intended the DBCA would be involved, and the DBCA, as I see it, would be involved in formulating option 2. But it's important to understand that the decision here is not a decision of the DBCA. It's a decision of this council, and this council is informed by experts like the DBCA, but it's also informed by the community, and that's why we need to go out to options. So we need to be taking input from the DBCA. And we just need to be going back out to the community and say, look, guys, you wanted a sheep pile, but, we've got this great managed retreat option. Are you sure you don't want that? It'd be interesting to see what they have to say. Who knows? They might come up with option E and any other option. There might be some combination of the two. So it's quite a cohesive community. I think going out to public consultation will be effective, and I'm sure they will listen to the DBCA's option. Thank you. That's why I suggest you support this amendment.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the amendment? There's no other speakers. Have a right to reply if you wish, Councillor Catalano. Or do you want to put it straight to the vote?
I'll just go back to the idea that, yes, I think I really want to stress that the Guildford community does need to be heard. Just like every single community in the City of Swan does need to be heard about things that affect them. So I really want to have that consultation. I know it takes time, and I know it does cost money, and I know...
Sorry, Councillor Catalano, you can only negate, and there's only one speaker against being Councillor Kiley, you can negate his debate, not repeat stuff you put... debate you had in your original...
No, I don't have an original debate. I'm just negating.
Debate.
I'm negating the idea. What I'm negating is the idea that somehow it's just not a good idea to consult with the community, and I think it's always a great idea to consult with the community, and especially since the community in Guildford have really been involved in this already. So it would be just be so unholistic to not include them at this point where we're asking for DBCA input as well. I just think it's a great idea to bring everybody together, and then we really do have all the answers available before us to make the decision. And that is really a decision as to how to spend ratepayers' money, as well as look after the environment.
Thank you. We're now voting on the amendment, councillors, which is on the screen or on the screen in front of you. So I'll now put it. It was moved Councillor Catalano, seconded by Councillor Bowman. Those in favour? I have Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. That gives me 8. The amendment becomes part of the substantive motion. Thank you. Did you get all those names, Megan? Thank you. The rest of the councillors were against. So that forms part of the substantive motion. Is there any other speakers for or against the substantive motion? Being no other speakers, do you wish your right to reply, Councillor Johnson?
Only to say, Mr Mayor, that I think it's an excellent motion and I think everyone should support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now putting the substantive motion, councillors. Those councillors in favour. I have Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 8. The motion is passed. All other councillors were against. Thank you, councillors. That completes that item. We now move to item 13.8, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority. It's on page 37 of your agenda. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I move that council resolve to 1. Note the list of statutory planning decisions made under delegated authority for the period of 11 January through to 13 February 22. 2. Request the CEO write to the West Australian Planning Commission requesting that they provide the City of Swan with the number and details of decisions determined under delegated authority for the Swan Valley on a monthly basis. Should the West Australian Planning Commission grant the request, include this list in the reports to Council.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried unanimously, which takes us to item 3.9, provision of place-based shade on page 43. Councillor Bowman, you're first.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that Council resolves to 1. Endorse the implementation of option 1 of implementing a natural shade-only approach with full implementation to be completed within a 2-year period. 2. Approve the additional capital and operational budgets to the long-term financial planning beginning 2022-23. 3. All developer-provided playgrounds must have suitable full natural shade provided before the handover of the assets to the City of Swan. And 4. Record the reason for changing the officer's recommendations as being 1. The provision of tree shade is a much better environmental outcome and provides an increased tree canopy within the City of Swan. 2. Reducing the staging from 5 years to 2 years provides a quicker period of time for the shading of all playgrounds. And 3. Planting trees for shading of playgrounds should be a requirement for all developer-provided playgrounds.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against? There is. Do you wish to debate it? Yes. Thank you, Councillor Bowman. You have 3 minutes for your opening debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, a good decision is one that's a win-win outcome, but what about a win-win-win outcome? And this is what I'm proposing here, councillors. We acknowledge we need more tree canopy across the city of Swan. Many people want trees, but not on their verges, so let's plant a lot more of trees in our parks and around our playgrounds for shade. Surely planting only 1,253 trees in the financial year is a failure. More trees is more habitat for the birds. Let's not wait to do this over a 5-year period. Do it over 2 years. I prefer 1. However, I understand that we need to pre-order soon for winter 2023. That's win number 1. Number 2, the cost of capital projects, we're all aware, keep going up and up. The cost of trees are not going up to the same extent. As a council, we'll need to focus our budget the next 2 years, not so much on the capital items that we have done in the past, but more on getting on top of those outstanding maintenance items. We need to focus on getting on top of things, and this allows us the resources to address the lack of shade in many of the playgrounds. That's been a situation for many years. Win number 2. The option that I'm proposing results in a net financial saving with a few zeros after the figure, which is an ongoing net saving year after year, as there will not be the future ongoing replacement costs of the shade sales. The city is constantly under ever-increasing financial pressures. Some councillors, both past, present and future, of the view to never increase rates, but at the same time promise everything. Well, this is an impossible outcome. There's usually a standard electioneering statement, but what we can do is look at how to save money in our current operations so we can keep rates low or able to undertake more projects. That's win number 3. And councillors, just in case you don't agree with one of those wins, I've stated, well, here's another win as well. Developers need a forward plan. They need to ensure the playgrounds that they
have 1 minute left,
hand over to the city are covered with full natural shade. This will either require them to not cut down some pre-existing mature trees, or they will need to plant them very early in the development to ensure the playgrounds are fully shaded. And that makes win number 4. Councillors, we need to be strategic. We need to be looking 10 years ahead all the time, because if we aren't, then we're actually looking behind. And what I see in 10 years' time is big, beautiful trees engulfing our parks and playgrounds that kids and parents can enjoy all year round, any time of the day, while also listening to some happy wildlife. Councillors, let's start turning words into actions. Let's start by mass tree planting in our parks and playgrounds.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Zanino is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that Councillor Bowman has adequately covered all those aspects, and I concur with all those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Richardson first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to staff, to Mr Coaten. The size of the trees that are going to go in to the proposed playgrounds, what size are these trees that are going in terms of height, if we're looking at this staging, that we're going to get this quicker coverage between the 2 and 5 years to make it? What size are we looking at?
The volume of the base, we talk in terms of litres, so it would probably be, for ones like this, it would be reasonably large. We'd probably be looking at 100-litre trees. So, well, it would vary depending on the species and things like that, but perhaps so high. It's difficult to give an exact height because they would be different heights depending on the species, but they'd be as well grown as we could get them to be able to use them in that environment.
Councillor Knight, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Just following on from Councillor Richardson, could we make that as an amendment that we could get some semi-mature trees planted in these playgrounds? I think it's a good idea to expedite the shade.
So are you moving an amendment?
Yes, please.
Oh, what is your amendment?
That we acquire trees of a certain age, maybe 5 years at least, or a certain height, to expedite the
I
shade.
only deal with one question at a time. I'm trying to get Councillor Knight to phrase his amendment.
A little bit more specific, just for Mr Coaten to be able to procure.
Mr Coaten, can you assist?
I'd suggest rather than trying to specify something on the run tonight, if this is adopted, that can be something that can be discussed afterwards as part of the budget discussions. We'd obviously try and get trees as large and mature and fast growing as we could, but those discussions on the detail can occur later on, so I'd be reluctant to incorporate them into a motion that's just on the run.
So you want to withdraw your amendment? Thank you. Councillor Parry, you had a question?
I have a few questions to Mr Coden, if that's okay, Mr Mayor.
Thank
First
you.
question is point 3. All developer-provided playgrounds must have fully suitable or suitable full natural shade provided before the handover of the asset to the City of Swan. How can you measure that? What, Sorry.
Yeah, that would just be through a site inspection at the time of handover, in terms of assessing the site and making sure that there is natural shade there. So you could perhaps do a projection of how much you think that the trees are going to grow, but if it is specified that they have to be like that at handover, if there's not adequate natural shade provided, then the intention, I understand, is that we wouldn't accept handover.
You have a further question? Yeah, Councillor Catalano, you are next.
Yes, I've got quite a few questions. Just with the trees. Okay. How long does it take a tree to grow so that it gives adequate shade to a play space?
Can you answer that, Mr Coton?
It would be talking about years. Yeah, I don't have an exact figure.
Okay. How old are the trees that are... So you said about 1.5 metre high that we put in now, roughly that height. How old are those trees that we buy now? Sorry.
We buy trees of different height and age and size, and so I deliberately didn't specify a height that they would be. But again, I think some of that detail, if council adopt this motion, that's the sort of detail that can be sorted out later.
Okay, so does that mean you're not sure?
Yeah, we haven't gone into that level of detail in terms of specifying a height that each tree will be that is put in there. No, we haven't done that.
What do you think the cost is of actually putting in a mature tree, one that is, established, that would actually provide shade? How much would that tree would it cost to put a tree like that in to a park or anywhere?
In the financial analysis that was done for this, it was based on a site of $2,700 per location for the playground, but that was obviously for the younger trees that would be growing. So that's what the analysis was done on for this. So that's what that option, the intention of that option is. It's not to transplant mature trees in there.
But I think we would... Isn't that what we... okay, we're not talking about it in this instance. Okay.
Do you have a question, Councillor Congdon?
No, it's been answered.
Thank you. So I've had mover and a seconder speak. Now looking for a speaker against the motion. Councillor Congdon first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably my concern would be item 3 of the proposal by Councillor Bowman. There are a lot of small developers out there that do small lot developments, and if we're looking at planting a 1.5, 1.6, 1.8 metre tree that could take 10 years to get to maturity, then are we going to hold that developer to ransom until such time as the city deemed that tree to be of a suitable size as a playground canopy? I think it's something that these developers would be in and out and gone in that time, and how do we do that to a developer without some commentary sitting around in the initial development saying, this is what you need to do, this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to measure it, and what penalties are in place if they simply get up and take their satchel with them and leave.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Howlett, you are next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a question as well, but should I direct that now or should I speak against the motion first?
If you ask your question, it
Okay.
may change the way you debate. So
Thank you. So, Mr Coton, in the report we've got 3 different types of parks listed. Ones that have shade sails, ones that have good natural shade, and ones that have partial natural shade. Do we have a category there for parks that have neither? Because I can identify a couple in my ward. So that's my question.
Well, I think you've answered your own question, Councillor Howlett. You've asked Mr Coton. There's some that have neither, and you said you can identify some. So obviously there are some.
Okay, so there isn't a list compiled because I can see some parks not listed on either of those. So there must be a 4th list, I guess is what I'm saying.
You have 3 minutes for your debate.
Thank you very much. Children and families need shade now. Shade at playgrounds is the kind of amenity that people expect for their rates. Well-protected playgrounds add to the viability and the desirability of our suburbs. We must put the community first, put in place the shade required to protect our children. We were a very hot suburb out in the city of Swan. I agree with Councillor Bowman that we must look forward, but in doing so we can't neglect the community of today. The current track record the city has for watering trees is not the greatest. I think we can probably all agree with that. So we do run the loss or run the risk of tree loss and then further delays. We want to attract families into our suburbs. Providing shaded playgrounds are what these families expect and what they deserve. We always seem to find the money to build roads. We should be able to provide the amenity to families and children with shade sails. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do support Councillor Bowman's motion. I remember when we had Spring Park Reserve in Guildford, the playground that was upgraded, we had discussions with the City of Swan then, and we weren't allowed to have many of the trees come in and plant trees then, and we were told we had to have a staged approach. Those trees were going to be small, and that would be probably 3 years ago and 4 years ago now. Those mature trees, to get to a stage of shading a small playground such as that, would take 20 years. I went and visited a small area in Midland where a constituent had planted trees 20 years ago. It took 20 years for these trees to reach maturity, for the type of trees that you would need to shade that size of playground. Well, I'm definitely for planting trees. They need to begin early and they need to begin now if we can't have mature trees at the cost that Mr Coton has supplied. The only interim is the shade sails. When you have small children and babies attending playgrounds and parents and elderly family members, you cannot wait for the trees to grow. There is no shade. It is blistering heat in Western Australia. So I do support Councillor Bowman's motion, but I also see that we need to have shade sails as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Your question, Councillor Catalano?
The option 3 is for trees and shade sails. Mr Coton.
Did you hear the question, Mr Coton? Option 3.
Yeah, I think so. The question was, it's a combination of shade sails and trees was the question. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion or against the motion? Any other speakers? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Look, I've had at least two inquiries this week about shade sails in parks. People want shade sails in parks, and you know, I've heard that for the whole time that I've been on council. Before I got on council, people want shade sails in parks. It's just too hot for their kids to go and play out there without some shade, and we can't wait. We can't lose a whole generation of children to not playing on the equipment that we've provided because we're waiting 20 years, and I'm afraid that is the length of time. Trust me, I've been there. 20 years for a tree to grow to the kind of height where it provides shade. Even then, that might not be totally ideal because, shade is provided at an angle, and the middle of the day, obviously, trees can't provide shade over that play equipment because you can't have the trees shading the play equipment all the time either. So there's a lot of different issues with just relying on trees. And I think the other thing about shade sales is that they do actually provide, they actually say to the community, we are looking after your amenity, we're looking after your parks, we're using your money to give you the things that you want. It's a visible reminder to the community that we're actually doing what they want us to do. Plus, also, what it does is the shade sales protect the equipment from the blast of solar rays onto it. I mean, I've seen lots of very faded play equipment now that's standing out there in the, intense summer sun, and it fades very quickly. A lot of it's made out of plastic, as you know, so it fades very quickly. So this will be a way, these shade sales will be a way to, provide some cover for that.
1 minute left, thank you.
So, I mean, it's the other thing about this particular motion that's put here is, yes, we've heard about, it's actually not pretty much going to be a 20-year waiting for developers to put in full natural shade around parks before, that can be handed over as an asset. It's just impracticable. It's not going to work. And the idea that the City of Swan or that anyone could put in a fully mature tree is just, the costs of that, it's getting in the tens of thousands of dollars for that kind of tree. And whether it would survive or not is another issue. So obviously we have to plant them at a sort of 2-year, they'll be about 2 or 3 years old, those trees, and it will still take another 30 years. So that's why we need the shade sales in the interim. And that's why I can't support this one, because we do need those shade sales, and we can't. We need the trees as well.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 3 minutes. Any other speakers for or against the motion, councillors? Councillor Johnston is speaking for or against.
Against, Mr. Mayor. I'll just speak quite briefly.
Thank you. 3 minutes.
I think we're probably all aware that this option recommended by the officers, option 3, did not just suddenly arrive when the agenda was issued. The options analysis was done by the staff and presented to council, I think, sometime about a year ago. And I remember a very interesting briefing where we went through all of the options and they were explained in detail. And council laws at the time discussed what they wanted, and the view was that this option 3 was the best one. And the reason is, as Councillor Catalano has explained, parents want shade sales over playgrounds for their children. But as councillors, and as Councillor Bowen is pointing out, we need to provide services at the lowest possible cost, in this case, shade. So we need shade over our playgrounds, but we know we need to do it now. So what this is about solving the problem in the short term by putting up shade sails and planting trees, and then once the trees have grown big enough, to remove the shade sails, thus removing the maintenance costs. So it means that in the long term, we've got trees providing low-cost shade and also protecting our environment. So that's how we got to option 3. So I'd encourage councillors to support Councillor Catalano's alternate motion for option 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? No other speakers. Councillor Bowman, you have 3 minutes for a right of reply. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, before I forget, I'll be asking for recommendation 3 to be put separately to 1, 2 and 4. Mr Mayor, I've said, look, 10 years ahead. If we had done this, we wouldn't have this issue. But let's get down to the points of option 3. There's 83 playgrounds that are not on those lists that have not got shade. Option 3 does not solve that problem. Go with option 3, there's a 2% rate increase. I've heard that everyone wants the shade right now. That's actually option 5. 15% rate increase, councillors. 15%. We can't afford it. There is no other way to do it. Remember, councillors, Option 3 is not putting shade sails on every playground. That's continuing on an ad hoc basis. 83 playgrounds are not listed in those attachments, and I've got that list, and that will not be getting shaded. Councillors, we have to make the hard decisions. We want to keep rates down, but you want increased expenditure. My financial background says that doesn't work. Councillors, the developers. A smart developer will keep mature trees and put the playground there. Go to Bullsbrook, fantastic development there where they've kept established trees. They even moved the road around there for shade. Councillors, I'm a parent. I've got 4 kids. I'd rather take my kids to a playground where there is natural shade, and I can name quite a few, than a man-made structure that is shaded between probably the hours of 10 to 2. The shade sails don't move when the sun moves. You can't put a shade sail over the whole playground plus everything else. Put trees all around it, councillors, and it actually will shade. Councillors, I understand it won't be instantaneously, but that's why I'm saying do it in 2 years and not 5 years, because trees are a lot bigger planted now than in 5 years' time.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion of Councillor Bowman. Those in favour?
Mayor, I ask for point 3 to be put separately.
So 1, 2 and 4, Mr Mayor, and then 3 separate.
Hang on.
So 1, 2 and...
Well, where's 4?
Oh, sorry, 4 is the reason. Yeah. So what's it 1 and 2 and then 3 separate?
So Councillor Bowman wishes to split his motion.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
What's your point of order, Councillor Johnson?
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what you're doing. So you're splitting Councillor Bowman's motion?
Yes.
1 and 2.
And I wish this had been brought up before we were going to vote on it. So we're voting on items 1, or parts 1 and 2 of Councillor Bowman's motion, and then we'll vote on part 3. So,
1, 2 and 4, we put recommendations as a motion.
So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware we're going to be voting on items point 1 and 2 of Councillor Bowman's motion as that appears on the whiteboard, and 4 being the reason. So those in favour, if you could raise your hand, of Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Zanino. Everyone else is against. That part fails. Now you're moving part 3, Councillor Bowman.
Question at this point.
Questions allowed at this point.
Well, I think it's fair. We've got to understand what's going on.
Well, we're now going to put part 3, Councillor Johnson, just as we put parts 1, 2 and 4.
I'm asking what the effect, though, is. In the event that we support option 3, do we then go on to, part 3 of Councillor Bowman's motion? Do we then go on to Councillor Catalano's motion?
If this is successful, if this part is successful, then Councillor Catalano's motion would fall away, is my understanding. Well, Councillor Bowman's shaking his head, so he's confused me. I'll just take some advice from the governance manager when she's ready.
Mr Mayor, on indication Councillor Johnson, what Councillor Johnson's raising means that we may not have a substantive motion just with 3 on its own if it is successful. So that's the challenge that you have.
You can ask a question, Councillor Catalano.
Has Councillor Bowman effectively had 2 motions, 2 alternate motions? Put 2 alternate motions to the meeting tonight?
No, he's asked for his motion to be...
I know, but doesn't that effectively leave us with 2 alternate motions if either of those motions can actually affect the... You see what I'm saying?
I'm just waiting on advice from the governance officer. What happens when people want to play around with things.
Yep.
Question, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Johnson.
At the risk of complicating things further, would it not be better if Councillor Bowman moved his part 3 as an amendment to Councillor Catalano's alternate motion?
Well, we have to deal with that part 3 anyhow. It hasn't been dealt with, so we have to deal with that first.
You're right.
I don't believe it can because it's already been lost. So, your advice, Mr. CEO?
Yeah, so Mr Mayor, I mean, I think as recommendation 3 from Councillor Bowman stands as it is at the moment, our advice would be that it's not substantial enough to stand alone, and that would you consider either incorporating that to the officer's recommendation or, as Councillor Johnson suggested, to Councillor Catalano's alternate going forward?
And my understanding from Councillor Bowman is that if his item 3 is defeated, then it can't form part of Councillor Catalano's motion because it's already been debated and defeated. So I'm just going to put item 3 as it stands, councillors, as it's on the board. Planting trees for shading of playgrounds should be a requirement for all developers provided at playgrounds. Those in favour? Of Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Zanino and Councillor Henderson. That's 5. The motion is lost. All others were against, which now takes us to your motion, Councillor Catalano. Thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back over that point, and I want to raise that quite as an official kind of point to make at this juncture. If we're going to allow...
Councillor Catalano...
I mean, how do I address this formally? Because there's a concern that's been raised now by this kind of splitting of motions. So, effectively, we've got two alternate motions by the same person.
Councillor Catalano, do you want to move your motion as listed in
I do, but I also wanted
I'm asking you to move it, and I'll call for a seconder, and then we'll debate it and vote on it. Going back now, talking about split motions is not the right time.
So, can you just give me some advice as to when that is the right time to raise that? Because that's a procedural about the meeting procedures that I wanted to actually get some advice on.
Okay, well, it's not going to help your motion.
No, I know.
I'm asking you now to move your motion, and then I'll call for a seconder. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to move my motion, but
well,
I also would like
out?
to have my question answered. And I mean, it's a legitimate. I mean, I'm asking just a question about meeting procedures. Can I have some advice, please?
Ms. Albrecht, do you understand the question?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. It is possible to, when you're putting a vote, to split up complex motions so that the council votes on the parts separately. The difficulty that I had with the way the council split that particular item was the order in which it was put. So because parts 1, 2 and 4 were put first and lost, to me, the substantive part of that motion then fell away. So the part 3, to me, didn't have anything to hang off anymore. If we'd done it the other way round, so if you'd voted on part 3 first and that had lost, I wouldn't have had any concern about then moving parts 1, 2 and 4. It was just because the substantive part of the motion, to me, had fallen away. But it's always these things are always a question for the presiding member to determine.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to clear this up. Apologies for taking up time, but it's quite important. Now, let's just say that item 3 had been actually voted on first and passed. Would that have actually replaced the whole of the motion? That would have been then the motion that got passed as an alternative to the officer's recommendation. Would it have been the motion that was the alternate to the officer's recommendation?
It's hard for me to understand a scenario where that part would have been approved and the other part not.
Councillor Catalano, I really want to impress. I'd like you to move your motion and we can debate it. Time is crucial tonight. There's a lot of agenda items to discuss, and these are questions which I think can be clarified after tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I will do that. I wanted to raise that because it's an important procedural
Well,
matter.
can I get the
that's
motion on the floor first?
Yes,
then?
but it's no point steaming ahead if what we're going to keep.
What's your question, Councillor Johnson?
I'd like to know, thank you. Yeah, the question is, Mr Mayor, is when you were given advice about how to deal with this, you didn't take the CEO's advice. Instead, you took Councillor Bowman's advice. Now, the CEO is the person who's supposed to advise you, not Councillor Bowman. Now, this is raising a concern that Councillor Bowman has got other motions, alternate motions. Is he going to split those as well? How are we going to deal with it?
I took the advice of the CEO. I saw Councillor...
That didn't happen.
Councillor Johnson, I'm telling you what happened.
We'll
I
listen
took
to it
the
on the video.
advice of the CEO, but I saw Councillor Bowman nodding his head in agreement. So, Councillor Catalano, I'll ask you for the third or perhaps fourth time to put your motion, please.
Okay, thank you. That the Council resolved to, 1, endorse the implementation of option 3 of providing shade sails as required in the short term with the aim to transition to natural shade in the long term. 2, approve the additional capital and operational budget to the long-term financial plan beginning 2022/23.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Congdon. Is there anyone against? Question first.
Through Mr Mayor to Mr Coaten. Mr Coaten, the $6 million, which represents an extra 2% of rates, is that for all 83 playgrounds that have got no shade? Will it only be for some of those? How long will that also take?
So the proposal for that is that they'd be rolled out over a 5-year period. So new shade sales would be provided at an additional 82 sites, and the existing 41 sites that have got shade, that would be maintained and additional trees planted around it. And 37 of the trees that have got partial shade will have additional trees planted at them. And then at the end of that period, at the end of the life of those shade sales, when the trees have established, the shade sales will be removed.
My next question to the Exec Manager of Corporate, can she advise where we'll find $3.5 million in the savings in the budget to pay for this, or will it be necessary to do a 2%, which is actually probably 2.5% rate increase to cover the costs?
Ms Leahy.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, if this is an additional $6 million, it's not 2% rate increase, it's closer to 4%. And Council could consider options at their next budget workshop to actually explore how this might be done.
Satisfied with the answer, Councillor Bowman?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think everyone gets my point.
Thank you. I'll ask again.
Question.
Is there anyone against the motion? I know I'm asking if there's anyone against, otherwise we might not have to debate it. Councillor Henderson, you've got a question.
In respect of the time frame for the 4%, is that based over the 5 years or based over another period?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I may have misinterpreted that. Mr Coaten has just advised that's the cost over 50 years. I thought this was referring to an additional $6 million for 22-23.
Okay, so the other question is, part 2, approve the additional capital operational budget to the long-term plan. That does that need a majority vote because of its budgetary implications?
Ms Leahy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, Council's standard practice is to vote in a situation like this through simple majority to add something to the draft budget.
But it doesn't say draft, that's why I asked.
I'll ask again. Is there anyone against the motion?
I am, but I don't want to debate.
You don't wish to debate it? Does anyone wish to debate the motion?
Got a question.
question, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, just a clarification of the spend. Are we spending the money over 5 years? It says this option will be staged over a 5-year period. So as I understand it, the difference between option 1 and option 3, and if you divide that by 5, you get $689,000 a year. So that's not 1% on rates, that's about 0.6% on rates, I believe.
Mr Coaten or Ms Lay?
I'm not quite sure exactly what the question was.
If you could repeat it, Councillor Johnson, thank you.
Yeah, if I subtract 2.5 million from 6 million, so I got 6 minus 2.5, and then if that's going to be paid for over 5 years, so I'm dividing by 5, I've got 0.7, so $700,000 a year over 5 years, so that's approximately 0.7% rate rise is my understanding, assuming a rate rise is necessary.
Other costs involved in that, it's not as simple as just the capital cost involved, so the financial modelling also included things like maintenance costs for the trees over the 50-year life, etc., and things like that, and the cost to remove the shade sails at the end of their life and things like that. That's more than just the capital cost.
Thank you, councillors. I'll ask again. There was a councillor indicated he's against the motion but didn't wish to debate. Does anyone wish to debate the item before I put it? Okay, I'm now going to put the motion as moved by Councillor Catalano. Those in favour? Of Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Richardson, Councillor McCulloch. The motion is passed. All other councillors were against. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next item, item 13.10, Baskerville Drainage Study. It's on page 52 of the previous agenda. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council resolve to defer consideration of this matter to an ordinary meeting of Council on or before June 1st.
Sorry, Councillor Zanino, did you declare an interest in this item? Baskerville Drainage Study?
I did. It was a impartiality interest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And 2, reason for the deferral is to allow time to hold a meeting of interested councillors to enable them to be briefed by staff on the relevant history pertaining to the drainage study in the area.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Johnson? No? No one wishes to debate it? Then I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour of the deferment? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. The motion is passed. Thank you. I think the only ones against Councillor Johnson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor Howlett were against. Thank you. Moves us to the next item, 13.11 on page 96, Road Resurfacing, Arbour Drive, Allenbrook. Councillor Bowman, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I move that Council resolves to undertake a local area traffic management assessment of the area. 2, provide Council with options of mitigating, redirecting traffic away from Arbour Drive and Brookmount Drive and onto the Promenade and the Broadway. 3, note that the rehabilitation of Arbour Drive using red asphalt and interlock pavers as a wearing surface will be undertaken once Council approves the suitable traffic mitigation solution. 4, advise the submitters of the decision. And Mr Mayor, my reasons for changing the officer's recommendation are there is a need to first address the use of Arbour Drive and Brookmount Drive as a shortcut route run for residents instead of using the Promenade and the Broadway. 2, Arbour Drive is not a distributor road, it's a local road. And 3, Arbour Drive has tripled the amount of recommended vehicles movements per day. That first needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? The motion lapses for the want of a seconder. Sorry, you're too late, Councillor Prodovnik. I've dealt with this on previous meetings. When I call for a seconder, I look around the room twice. If I see no hand, then I'm going to call it. Moving to the next item, it's a confidential item. It's 13.1. The motion lapsed for want of a seconder.
Do you want to go to the officer's recommendation?
Okay, we'll need a recommendation. Councillor Jones? You're moving the officer's recommendation, Councillor Jones? You're seconding it, Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Jones, you've got 3 minutes to start your debate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only reason that I was against the previous... Oh, sorry. I thought it was on. The only reason that I was against the last motion is that I don't believe the traffic study should be requested at this stage, as currently Google Maps is directing people to go this way when travelling to the further parts of Ellenbrook. Example, Malvern Springs, the Vines, and on to Annie's Landing. The reason I am going with the officer's recommendation is that the city is currently initiating conversations to improve the route selections. If Google Maps discontinue to direct people this way, the traffic volumes may be cut dramatically. I'd like to thank the city staff for listening to the requests of the residents to resurface with red asphalt and interlock pavers. Let's get the road resurfaced and see what the outcome of the Google route selection is. And that's the reason I'm moving the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kohler is the seconder. Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Bowman.
Councillors, nothing annoys me more when a local government does something to a road and then 6 months later or 12 months later it's ripping it up because they've either changed their mind or then have done a plan of how to do things better, or they've got to put a pipe down there. Why would we spend money, and a lot of money, addressing Arbour Drive and resurfacing it when we then may come to a different conclusion when we look at what's best? Arbour Drive, 9,000 vehicles a day. It's supposed to be designed for 3,000. I used to live on Arbour Drive back when it was only the display homes. It's come a long way and we expect traffic to increase, but not to this level. Remember, at the end of Arbour Drive, there's a school there. I get complaint after complaint about the vehicles speeding down Brookmount and onto Arbour. In my campaign, I only got wiped out coming off of Arbour because it's so dangerous. And councillors, again, it's the chicken and egg approach. What should come first? Surely we're not going to resurface a road and then think afterwards, what's the best way to mitigate it? Let's do the mitigation plan first and then do the resurface.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? No other speakers. Councillor Jones, you have a right of reply if you wish to use it.
I don't wish to use it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the officer's recommendation. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. I declare the motion carried.
I'm against and I'm just voting.
Yes, there was 13 for, and Councillor Bowman and Councillor Catalano. Sorry, Councillor Richardson, can you indicate which way you voted, for or against the motion? It's for the motion. It was 13-2. Councillor Bowman and Councillor Catalano dissented. Thank you. That takes us to 1312, which is a confidential item.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to discuss any personal details, so we don't need to go behind closed doors. I'm not going to make any comment about the people on there. Suffice to say that they need a deferral.
Thank you. I'll get you to move your motion, but if someone wishes to debate it, then we may have to go behind closed doors. So if you can move your motion, thank you.
So that Council
resolve to defer considering the sale of the 2 properties listed below, which have rates and charges in arrears for 3 years or more, in accordance with the Local Government Act and pursuant to section 6.64 for 2 months. So the property addresses in Ellenbrooks and the Vines.
Thank you. And the assessment numbers are there, councillors. And your reason, thank you.
To allow further investigation and discussion on the matter.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried unanimously, which takes us on to item 13.13, Councillor Johnson, assessment of elected members' development applications. Thank you. Can you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor Dovnik? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to request the Mayor to write to the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries requesting that the Department consider, as part of the Local Government Act review, whether alternative arrangements should be made for the assessment of development applications when the property owner is an elected member of Council. The alternative arrangements when the property owner is an elected member of Council might include employing an independent planner to assess the application and make a recommendation, for the report and recommendation to come to Council on the Council agenda, and for Council to make a recommendation only to the West Australian Planning Commission or Development Assessment Panel for the decision to be made by the WAPC or JDAM. And the reason for my motion is that it appears that any local government council would have a conflict of interest when deciding a fellow elected member's development application.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howlett. Is there anyone against the motion? There is. Do you wish to debate it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to start your debate. Thanks, Councillor Johnson.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. In the interest of time, I'd like to say it's self-explanatory, so I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett is the seconder.
I concur with Councillor Johnson. Nothing to say.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Congredon.
It's the quickest 3 minutes I've ever heard, Councillor Johnson. I am 100% against this. Council has the ability to deal with all planning applications, which include any councillor knowing another councillor to declare an interest of impartiality or financial or otherwise and walk out of the room, whatever the decision might be. The problem I have with the proposal is one part says for the report and recommendation to come to Council on the Council agenda. It seems to me if it's going to come back to Council on the Council agenda, the same issue that you might be referring to, as in terms of conflicts of interest, will still be there when it comes back. So I don't know how on earth you could suggest that an independent body assess it, then it comes back to Council for Council to determine that assessment.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment, and that amendment is everything after the word elected member of council, so the alternative assessment and the 3 dot points be deleted.
Just waiting for it to come up on the board so we can see exactly.
I'm all right with that, Mr Mayor. Those 3 bullet points are just suggestions, they're not an intention.
Okay, so the amendment's acceptable to the mover and the seconder? Yes. So it'll become part of the substantive motion. Becoming part of the substantive motion, is there anyone against or wishes to speak against it? Now it's been amended, yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I'll repeat what I said before. I'm absolutely 100% against it.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against before Councillor Kiley?
Quickly, Mayor, I don't think we should be treating ourselves differently to how we treat the rest of the community. Simple as that. So we don't need it. We shouldn't be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against, councillors? Then Councillor Johnson, your right to reply. Thank you.
Very interesting on this, Mr Mayor, because of course I don't have a right of reply because the only part of the motion that was in dispute was removed by the amendment. So put it to the vote, please.
Thank you. Those councillors in favour of Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Knight, Councillor Richardson, which is 5. The motion is lost. All other councillors were against. Thank you. Councillors, that takes us to item 13.14, Councillor Brodovnik, Devon Street, Woodbridge. Can you read your motion when you're ready? Thank you.
Sure. My motion is that Council resolve to 1, request the CEO investigate the feasibility of the City obtaining a management order from the State Government for lots 1, 2, 3, 4 and 178 Devon Street, Woodbridge, and to prepare a report for the ordinary meeting of Council on the 1st of June 2022 on this matter. Reason for the motion is 1, Friends of Woodbridge Bushland Group has a permit from the West Australian Planning Commission to rehabilitate this site, but they are unable to apply for funding grants until the City of Swan takes over management of the land. 2, the City's management of this land would enable the Friends of Woodbridge Bushlands Group to undertake a whole range of initiatives that would support and showcase this site's unique environment.
I've just had a quick discussion with the CEO to ask if the 1st of June is a practical date, and he's suggesting that the meeting in July might be better for staff to compile.
It's absolutely fine.
Thank you. That is the 6th of July. So if we replace the 1st of June to the 6th of July, and that's what I'm advised the date is. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Henderson? Okay. You've got 3 minutes to open your debate. Thank you, Councillor Brodovnik.
I'm not going to say too much more about this. This is a group that's been working to conserve this corridor for a very long time. I think the least we can do is just simply request a closer look at supporting them simply by contacting a state government department, asking a few questions and informing council in a couple of months. It's a very, very basic ask.
Thank you. Councillor McCulloch is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I think we know across the city, friends groups that are involved in our environment, looking at our environment and sustainability are very precious. They're gems, and you can't discount volunteer hours that do some very significant things in our community. We need to champion these causes and support them in every way we can. So I thank Councillor Brodovnik for this motion.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, as far as I'm concerned, this is a state government responsibility, and the fact of the matter is that the state should be finding some funds to be able to assist the group. There is no reason why we would want to take on a liability such as this, because frankly, as I said, it's a state government responsibility. So these kinds of pieces of land, as we've seen, are difficult to be developed. So the fact is we don't need another difficult piece of land. And I think if there was sufficient desire to see this land protected, which would be great, because as you know, I am very environmentally oriented, the state should be putting up for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, Councillor Brodovnik, you have a right of reply. Thank you.
I'd just like to make the point that the state will be putting the funds in for it, because this Woodbridge, Friends of Woodbridge group will be applying to the state government for funding grants. So ultimately the state government will be funding it if we decide to manage this corridor.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Councillors, those in favour? Everyone except for Councillor Henderson is for the motion. Councillor Henderson is against. I declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. That now takes us to part B of the agenda. An adoption of those recommendations contained in items not withdrawn. For the benefit of members observing the meeting, Council uses an en bloc method of decision making. This means that agenda items where Council supports the officer's recommendations are not debated separately. One vote is taken on all the items and the officer's recommendation is therefore the decision of Council. The following reports from Part B and Part C have been withdrawn for debate, and in accordance with Meeting Procedures Local Law 2019, they will be dealt with individually by councillors. I intend to read out the item numbers. Councillors, you've got the run sheet. You can look at the items. I do apologise for those at home and in the gallery. So items withdrawn for debate are item 3.1, item 4.1, item 4.2, item 4.3, item 4.4, item 4.5, item 4.6, item 4.7, item 4.8, item 4.9, item 4.11, item 4.12, item 4.14, item 5.1, item 5.2, item 5.3, item 5.7, item 5.8, item 6.3, item 7.1, item 7.3, item 7.4, item 7.5, item 7.6, item 7.7, item 7.8, item 7.9, item 7.10, item 7.11, item 7.12, item 7.13, and in Part C, the confidential items, item C 3.1, item C 3.2, item C 3.3, and item C 3.4. The following items have not been withdrawn for individual considerations and will be dealt with via the en bloc vote. Therefore, the officer's recommendation will be the decision of Council in relation to the following items. Item 4.10, item 4.13, item 4.15, item 4.16, item 5.4, item 5.5, item 5.6, item 6.1, item 6.2, item 6.4, item 7.2, and in Part C, item C 3.5, item C 3.6, and note that item 8.1, the Jacobs traffic report is for information only and there's no decision required on that item.
Yeah, can I ask that we take out C 3.6? I just have some questions about that behind closed doors.
Thank you. I'll note that Councillor Kiley wishes to withdraw item C 3.6 for some questions, which takes us to the first item.
Mr. Mayor, you haven't even put...
Sorry. I'll need a mover and a seconder for all those items mentioned in Part B for the en bloc vote, other than item C 3.6. Move Councillor Parry, seconded Councillor Kiley. Is there anyone against? There is no one against, so all those items mentioned second have been approved as per the officer's recommendation for those people in the gallery and watching at home. So the first item now to be discussed is item 3.1, the Heritage Survey. Councillor Jones, you have an alternative?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to defer this item. I'd like to request more time for councillors to discuss with staff the implications of the inclusion of the properties on its development potential in the longer term.
Thank you. So you're requesting a deferment. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Podovnik, is there anyone against? You're against. You wish to debate it, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, mostly because I don't understand it. It's not on the order paper.
It was a late withdrawal. Item 3.1, the Heritage Survey Midland.
Page is that?
115. 115.
So, Councillor Jones has asked for a deferment.
Until when, Mayor?
Councillor Jones, have you got an idea?
I'd like some advice from the CEO. How long would we need to ask a couple of questions that staff can't answer at the moment?
Mr van der Linde?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I suppose it depends on how many questions there are, but so we're happy to meet with the councillors that have any questions around that. To put it back to the May meeting, that needs to happen basically in this week with the long weekend in between. Otherwise, the June meeting will provide much more time for that discussion to take place.
Thank you. So there's your answer, Councillor
I'll
Johnson.
then move to the June meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. It was the 1st of June, I believe. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Johnson? Oh, okay. I'm just asking Councillor Johnson, do you wish to debate it?
Yes.
Thank you. What's your question, Councillor Catalano?
Just what kind of implications are we looking at? What kind of things were implications?
Well, I think that's why Councillor Jones wants a deferment, to find out if there are any implications.
Okay.
So there is a councillor against Councillor Jones. You can open your debate. You have 3 minutes if you need it.
Mr. Mayor, I won't debate this. Thank you.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Podovnik.
I think it's important to allow any councillor more information and more time if they need it. It's a very simple request and it's all part of good decision making.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Look, the reason I'm opposed is because I'm supporting the officer's recommendation. Councillors, we've heard there are some questions, but those questions were not raised during the agenda forum and they've not been raised tonight, so that's a bit of a mystery. And the second mystery to me is that Councillor Jones has not got any speech explaining why she thinks this should be delayed. The report itself explains fairly clearly what the impact of the different categories are on development. So Category 1 properties have exceptional significance to the locality and are defined as being essential to the heritage of the locality and a rare or outstanding example. So they have the highest level of protection. They cannot be demolished. Category 2 properties have considerable significance to the locality and are defined as being very important to the heritage of the locality. And basically, they also cannot be demolished. But Category 3 and 4 can be demolished. So if you take a look at the, Councillor Jones, if you turn to page 118, so we've got the Darling Range Hotel. So it's proposed Category 2. So the question for you, Councillor Jones, is in your right replies, are you intending to demolish the Darling Range Hotel? Because that's the only one that is protected. All of the others are Category 3 and Category 4. So all that means, from a development perspective, is that if there's a proposal to demolish any of these buildings or to make significant changes to them, it has to come to council. That's the effect on development, nothing else. That is the totality of it. So we could ask the staff right now. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. van der Linde, is that right? Am I correct that the totality of this is, if it's a 1 and 2, there's no demolition. If it's a 3 or 4, it basically comes to council. That's the impact on development.
Thank you, Mr. van der Linde.
Mr. Mayor, through you, from a purely point of view on the possibility to demolish those properties, Councillor Johnson is correct.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Question, Councillor Catalano.
Yeah, Mr. van der Linde, I was under the assumption that if it was a Category 3 and 4, that actually it could just be demolished just with a permit to demolish and that it doesn't need to come to council. I thought it was only actually Category 1 and 2 that required that permission.
Mr. Mayor, I think that is what I just explained and agreed to. I think that's what Councillor Johnson also said. The only other implication can be where the landowner itself decides to retain that property, if it's a Category 3 or 4. as has happened through a council resolution in December, where council resolved to retain category 3 properties in the avenue on Midland Oval.
Thank you. I ask again, is there any other speakers for or against the deferment? Councillor Catalano.
I just wanted to speak against it because I think, as Councillor Johnson pointed out, and I wasn't sure if it was answered correctly the first way, but anyway, you've confirmed. In fact, unless the new provisions of the Heritage Act, under which all this local government, they used to call it municipal inventory, it's the new standard. The thing is that there's only these 2 buildings in the current policy or proposal. There's only those 2 buildings, which is the Checkers and the Checkers pub and the Darling Range Hotel, that are listed as a Category 2, and they're the ones that come to council if there's any proposal for them to be demolished. In fact, every other single house and building that is going to be put on that list can actually be demolished, even though it's on the list, with a demolition permit. And that means that actually I don't think there's any implications either. I mean, that it's just that you just go down, if you've got a Category 3, if you're in a house that's listed on as Category 3, you just go down to the admin building, make out an application for a demolition permit, and you go ahead and do that. And it doesn't come to council at all. In fact, the only time that we had an exception to that was actually for those houses on the avenue, and that was because it was brought to council. And in fact, those Category 2 houses were then considered by this council to be significant enough where they had to come to council if they had to be if they were going to be demolished. So, in fact, that's why I asked the question about what implications we were going to consider or what needed to be considered, because I really don't understand either. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, through the Chair. Councillors, this is a deferral. We do this for pertinent and significant reasons, and if some of us do believe that there is a little bit more investigation and further thought required in regards to implications, and implications can look very different for all of us depending on where we're sitting with items as well, and I think it's pertinent that we address those and follow those through.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, Councillor Jones, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There is nothing suspicious about what I'm asking. It's just a few questions that I asked of staff that I didn't get an answer that I can absolutely determine that I can make a decision on this tonight. So I'm just asking for a determinant until I can work that out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those councillors in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. I declare the motion passed. I think there's 3 councillors against, which were Councillor Johnson, Councillor Catalano and Councillor Knight. The motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to item 4.1, the draft Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use. And Councillor McCulloch, I believe you have an amendment or a motion.
Motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe that is on the screen.
Just being typed up, councillors. So I might just get you to formally read that out. Now it's on the whiteboard. Thank you, Councillor McCulloch, and then I'll call for a seconder. Your question, Councillor Johnson? Thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
As I understand that, from the order paper, that Councillor Catalano has a motion going next.
She has, but as is our custom, Ward Councillor has the first opportunity, and I was advised earlier today that Councillor McCulloch wished to move a motion different to the ones we'd already received.
So, Mr Mayor, don't we have a rule about getting them in by Monday?
It's a recommendation, councillor, so staff have got the heads up and they can put it out in the forward plan. But if I can even take motions from the floor tonight of a.
So that's a new rule we've just made up tonight.
No, it's not a new rule, Councillor Johnson. If a ward councillor puts a motion to the council, then I'm obliged to take it, and that's always been our custom. So, Councillor McCulloch, I'll ask you to read your motion, and I'll call for a seconder. Thank you. When you're ready, thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, my alternative motion is the officer's recommendation that the council resolve to 1. Note the findings of this council report and attachment on the draft Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use Planning Strategy. 2. Submit a copy of this council report as its submission on the draft Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Land Use Planning Strategy, and continue to work with the state government to progress the strategy in an orderly and proper way, with an addition of item 4. To request that the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage to update council throughout the process as they work through the shortcomings, or the specific, if I may add in there, the specific shortcomings of the strategy as outlined in the report. Thank you.
I'll just need to word the as outlined in the report that's in there now. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowman, do I see your hand go up? No. Councillor... Sorry, I thought I saw a hand. Okay, I saw your first. So, second, Councillor Bowman. Is there anyone against?
Yes, I am.
You wish to debate it?
Yes,
thank you. I'll ask you to start your debate. Councillor McCulloch, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this draft strategy is a high-level strategic document providing a vision for the future development of the Bullsbrook Freight and Industrial Area. It includes infrastructure and transport requirements to support the proposed intermodal terminal and to provide for long-term employment opportunities. The purpose of this draft strategy was to provide a strategic framework for use by state, local government and other stakeholders to inform the next stages of the planning process and to guide future amendments for the Metropolitan Region scheme and our local planning scheme. Councillors, overall the City does support this draft strategy and the potential for the much needed economic development and activity in the North East Growth Corridor. However, we have received advice and the shortcomings of the strategy were outlined in this report. City officers worked through some of those, and some of those shortcomings and notes are included, and they include aspects of roads and the access networks, level crossings, groundwater levels, environmental impacts, economic impacts. Councillors, we've seen some considerable consultation in regards to this strategy as well. And what I'm asking is that we proceed with this. It has been decades in the making. It is a long-term process, and our city officers have outlined those shortcomings and they've been detailed, as you will see and as you have been able to read. They will be addressed as this process continues. So I would encourage you to support the officers recommended with my addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman is the seconder.
Councillors, as Councillor McCulloch stated, high level strategy at the moment. I have some concerns on a few things. I'd like to see those come back to Council. and how they're going to address those. There has been quite an intensive public consultation occurred. It is currently occurring as well with feedback. As Councillor McCulloch had said, officers support it. I see there's no reason at this point in time at this higher level to stop that. However, noting that I want to see how they're going to address a couple of those issues that have been raised.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. I went to the workshop that was held up at Bullsbrook recently by the consultants on behalf of the state government. You know, I asked a few questions. Mostly I asked them what happened to curtailing urban sprawl. And, you know, said to the meeting, we're talking about now from Bullsbrook all the way down to Busselton. I mean, that's what's being planned now. You know, you just wonder what's going to be planned thereafter. That's what I call sprawl. And, of course, you know, it was just a shrug of the shoulders, you know. Afterwards, a resident came up to me and she said, you know, I'm so glad you asked that question because I was really too intimidated to ask it. You know, there's a lot of people out there asking questions like, what is going on? When's this going to stop? And then another resident came up to me and she said, what a pity that they're going to put this industrial, it's a complex, I mean, it's more than a complex, this industrial area on the greenest land in Bullsbrook. It's permanently green because it's water that comes off the scarp. It was former swampland. And she said, what a pity. And I thought, yeah, I mean, actually, she said that's actually the best agricultural land in the district. And we're putting an industrial area on it. Or we're not putting. Now let's get it right. The state government is proposing that area, which is basically to the west of the RAF base in Bullsbrook, is basically turned into another Malaga. 1% tree cover. Our best agricultural land. I mean, sprawl. Honestly, it's... And the state government are asking us what we think about it. We should be upfront and honest with them and say...
1 minute left, thank you.
Do you know what? No. The sprawl has gone on for far too long and gone far too far. It's our food security at stake here. And actually, there's also the other issues raised by staff to do with the water quality down the Ellenbrook and the tortoises that we talked about previously. You know, and the hydrological impacts. But the main problem is our agricultural land. What are we doing to this country? What are we doing to our futures? What are we doing about all this sprawl? Surely we have got to take note of that, and we've got to actually start saying, no more sprawl. It's unsustainable. We've got our children's futures ahead of us. We've got communities living up there that are going to be basically in a massive heat sink. It's not going to be sustainable.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. That's your 3 minutes. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Henderson first.
Just briefly, Mayor, I just wanted to cover some of the points just raised. Number one, the water doesn't come off the scarp, it comes off the Nangara water mound. Number two, the land is principally sand, and the only way you can make it good farming land, apart from Kaikoura, I guess, is by pouring fertiliser on it by the pile of the stuff. That's what we've been trying to stop for years, to stop the outflow into the Ellenbrook and hence into the Swan. By the development of the industrial area, we will be able to control those things, and you won't get those fertiliser flows that have been going into the Ellenbrook for years and years and years. So I think there's big benefits of the development of this area, not just for that, but frankly, people do have to live somewhere. We talk about sprawl all day, but the fact of the matter is people have got to live somewhere, and the development of the North East Corridor has been a long-term project. It's something that is going to be of great benefit to people to get a job and to work, and I think the forwarding of this strategy is absolutely imperative. So I think some of the key issues around what the impacts might be do really need to be understood so we can get a good handle on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Howlett first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The concerns that stuck out to me the greatest really was the road and access networks. Potentially the 6-lane highway or upgrade of Great Northern Highway with the grade separation at the interchange. I mean, that's in stark contrast with the protection afforded to the Swan Valley prime agricultural land. The movement of oversized, overmass vehicles through the heart of the valley devalues all that the city has done to promote this as an international standard wine region and tourism region. I'm yet to know if there is really a demand for industrial use in Bullsbrook. Is there a major anchor tenant that's lined up to locate their business there? Are companies expressing interest? Is there truly a desire and need for it? We run the risk of destroying beyond repair agriculturally rich land in Bullsbrook and the agriculturally sensitive land in the Swan Valley by going ahead with an industrial site in Bullsbrook. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Councillor Jones, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Henderson stole a lot of my thunder, but I have a few things. I was going to mention quite a few things that he said. What I will say is I respectfully ask all councillors to remove themselves from micromanagement level and take the view from the helicopter. This is 50 years, planning for 50 years. I bet Melbourne and Sydney, when they came to the outskirts of their developments, went, wow, I wish we had planned 50 years in advance. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Kiley.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, sometimes you get a plan that looks great on paper, and I suspect the state government and maybe this council over many years have looked at this plan and think it looks great, and I agree, it does look good, and we need this development. We need it going forward for Perth and Peel 3.5 and beyond. I have no problem with another Malaga. I think it's a good asset to the community, and on the outskirts is also a good thing away from housing. However, this plan has one major flaw that is recognised in the report on page 282. The area has low-lying ground conditions with a high water table. Again, it looks good on paper, but the low-lying area and the groundwater table is a significant flaw in the whole plan, and I think it needs to be re-looked at seriously. And I note Councillor Catalano's motion is to look at the issues that have been raised, and one of them is the groundwater table. So the actual officer's report here says significant fill will need to be imported. It is envisaged that unless a future technological solution is found, significant fill will need to be imported to the area to allow for sufficient drainage and services to be provided. And we heard from Mr. James last week, who we're looking at millions and millions of tonnes of soil to be brought into the area. It's not viable. It's great on paper, fully support it, and fully support the intent. However, we need to be looking at maybe retaining this as agricultural land, because this might be the most suitable purpose for it, and look to move this industrial area somewhere else where it's not going to... I mean, we talk about moving things forward, but if we go forward with this plan, we're actually setting ourselves behind the... we're setting ourselves up to fail, and we should be the ones stepping up and saying, no, this is really not a good area, so please don't support this, and let's resolve some of the issues, particularly the water table issue, before we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to remind councillors of how many times on council we've heard with respect to large and serious decisions that, oh, council, that decision was made 60 years ago, or we decided that 20 years ago. So on this occasion, councillors, we're looking at, I'm told, a 50-year plan. So let's just put ourselves in the shoes of those people 50 years in the future. or councillors over the next 20, 30 years. And they're told, oh, that was decided in 2022, councillor. You can't change that. We've already decided that. So we're in that position right now of making that decision that will be quoted for the next 50 years. So the real question is, do we have enough information as a council to be making a recommendation? My view is, at this point, we don't. It's too soon. And in order to be sure that we're making a sufficiently well-informed decision for the community, for the future, and for our community, we need to look at page 284. So page 284, councillors, it talks about consultation. But if you read the consultation, it says, in November 2018, a community information session attended by 64 community stakeholders was held. So it was an information session. So I imagine they walk into a room and there's lots of posters and people telling them how wonderful it is, and here's a copy of the report. And the next so-called consultation was the DPLH invited members of the local community to attend a community drop-in information session. So, councillors, this is not, this again is information, this is not two-way consultation. It is just being told. Now, the third paragraph, it does say that we are going to advertise it for comment, but I suspect it might be more of the same. Councillors, what I would suggest we do, and what my motion suggests, is that we undertake public consultation. We need to go out and actually listen to people and say to the people in the Bullsbrook area, do you really want this? Is this what you want in your community for the next 50 years? We don't know what they want, and as you can hear, and as councillors can see, there are those views in favour and there are those views against. But right now, we don't know. I do have one concern, the idea of an industrial area with no sewerage. That's a bit of a concern. So people 50 years in the future will be saying, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? There's no sewerage, and it's an environmental disaster. But of course, all the way along, people will be saying that decision has already been made. So, councillors, I think we need to hear from a broader group of the community, and by that I mean all the electors, residents and ratepayers, and that includes the businesses and the people who own the land. And we also need to think about the future community. So that's why I'm opposed to this motion, because I think there is a better, more considered way forward that does more listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to staff. Just so I can make sure, we're not actually adopting a strategy, we're only recommending to progress it. I'm just checking that's right. And the second thing is, I just wanted to make sure that the issues that have been raised will be captured through the amendment that Councillor McCulloch did. And I just wanted to make sure that was...
Thank you, Mr Van der Linde.
Mr Mayor, through you, that is 100% correct. This report's been prepared in response to an invitation from the department to comment on the findings of the work that they've done to date, which they term the document. They've called it a strategy at this point, but it's a high-level strategic document which contains findings of the investigations to date, and we've looked at it, indicating that those issues need to be addressed in future. So you are correct, that will be addressed in the rest of the process. And so the consultation is the strategy is currently out as a part of a consultation period to the public until the 11th of April by the department.
Councillor Henderson, you've got a question?
I have a question. I just want to address a question in the last debate. Matters to do with the North East Corridor would be addressed with sewer handling, I imagine. Would that be right?
Did you understand the question, Mr Van der Linde?
Yes, it says part of the outstanding issues on this land
Any other speakers for or against? Then you have a right to reply. Thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, can I remind you again, this is a high-level document. This is decades in the making. It is future-focused, future-forward. I've heard comments in regards to curtailing urban sprawl. We're probably one of the fastest growing local government areas across the nation in some ways, and generally sit as the highest, leading the highest land sales in the state constantly each month, apart from probably this month when Mayor Tracy Roberts reminded me that Wanneroo beat us. So, yes. We're a growth council. These high-level strategic plans that put in place industrial areas that provide for people are there for a reason, and we need to take hold of those. We need to keep our finger on the pulse, and we need to make sure that we are addressing issues, and our city officers have identified that in these documents and in this strategy. Sprawl is unsustainable, but we're a growth council and we have sprawl. And I'm hoping that as we look at other developments within the City of Swan, we can look at where we build up as well, because I know that that is more sustainable. But we are a growth council and we are seeing some of that sprawl, and how we manage that wisely is important. So, councillors, this land use strategy is necessary, it's strategic, it's future focused as we continue to grow. As the process continues, there will be changes, amendments and redirections that continually morph with our city's changing needs and direction. I'm not going to say any more, but councillors, future focused, high level strategic document.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the vote. Those councillors in favour. Of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Congerdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which I believe is 9. The motion is passed. Can I have those councillors against to raise your hands, please? Against were Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richard, which is 6. The motion is carried, 9-6. Thank you. Takes us to the next item.
Mayor, break.
Yes, which will be, we'll have a break for 10 minutes. So we come back, be back in the chamber a couple of minutes before 8:30. Thank you, councillors, when we'll resume on the dot at 8:30. Thank you. The next item is item 4.2, Metropolitan Regional Scheme Amendment. Bullsbrook's on page 286, and Councillor Catalano, you have a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. That Council resolve to not support Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment 1390/57 to rezone land from rural to urban, but rather that it be modified to rezone the land from rural to an urban deferred zone, with a provision for the required lifting of the urban deferment and its replacement with an urban zone to be contingent on the operator of the landfill facility's successful surrendering of the prescribed premises licence to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation under the Environmental Protection Act 1986. 2. Support Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendments 1391/57 to rezone land from rural to urban deferred, noting the required lifting of the deferment and its replacement with an urban zone would be contingent on removal of a 500-metre separation buffer around a clay quarry and confirmation of road upgrading requirements to support the proposed scale of development in the locality. 3. Inform the Western Australian Planning Commission of the Council's resolution accordingly. 4. Record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is to ensure that the landfill site be successfully remediated before development can progress.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight. Is there anyone against? There is. Do you wish to debate it? Thank you. You have 3 minutes to start your debate. Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Well, this is fairly simple. It is basically that the rubbish tip, the landfill site, must be completely removed, and that's for the health and the amenity, for the comfort, for all the the good well-being of the people that are going to be moving into that new Bullsbrook town site and the new Bullsbrook subdivision that is adjacent in the northerly direction to that new town site. And I mean, there's not really much to say other than it's a recognised fact that people, when they live on what they call the peri-urban fringe of our cities or any cities, I mean, it's not just Perth, but the big cities in Australia, those people are a long way from the centre of the metropolitan region, and it's all too easy to forget about them. It's all too easy to forget about the quality of their neighbourhoods, about the infrastructure around them, and quite often, and I think I talked about this in this chamber last time, the Australian dream becomes the Australian suburban nightmare. So this is just to ensure that the appropriate controls are in place, and it should be at this stage of the planning. So what we're asking for is for an urban deferred zoning until the landfill is removed, and we should do that now so that we know
1 minute left, thank
that
you.
when the land can be zoned urban, that the landfill site has been completely remediated, and that's just really reasonable and best practice, and it should be right now at the early stages of planning that we should be starting to get these things right, put these controls in place. We need that kind of intervention, and that's what I'm suggesting that Council does with this, that they actually put those extra standards and those extra controls in, and I think it's the best practice for all of our residents that are going to be living up there in the future, so they don't get forgotten about and end up with a landfill on their doorstep.
Thank you. Councillor Knight is the seconder.
To add, Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, just quickly, I did have the very same concerns as Councillor Catalano, and I was going to go that way myself, being the ward councillor. However, I submitted a whole lot of questions, as I normally do, to the staff regarding this issue, and just in case those councillors didn't have time to read those answers, it was regarding the landfill, and it actually said, as per the staff report, it's considered that the site can be rezoned to urban, knowing that the WAPC can refrain from improving subdivision on the land until the land site has been adequately remediated. There are no impacts to the city because the authority and responsibility of rezoning is with the state. And so therefore, Mr Mayor, I will be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? And Councillor Catalano, you have 3 minutes for a right of reply. Thank you.
The thing is that those concerns that we have about the landfill not being properly remediated, they are best resolved at this point by ensuring that it is not zoned to urban before the landfill has been properly remediated. That's the proper thing to do. I mean, why do we have to just rely on, oh, things will be all right on the night? Why can't we put in place proper standards and proper controls? And that will ensure that the job is done properly. And it will get done. That's the other thing, that it will be done and that it will be done properly, because otherwise the land can't be zoned urban. I mean, they're the kind of powers that we can use here, and we should use them because people's well-being, their health, their amenity is reliant on the decisions that we make here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour, I have Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kylie, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. That is 7. The motion fails. The other 8 were against. Did you get all those names, Megan? You want them again?
Just the 8.
Okay, the 8 against, could you please raise your hand? That's Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch were against. Councillor Bowman, you foreshadowed a motion. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I foreshadowed the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. You're seconding it, Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against?
Yes, I'm against.
Do you wish to debate it?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I now put the motion. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 9. The motion is passed. I'll just ask you to raise your hand again. Thanks for those 4. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The motion is passed. Those councillors, the other councillors were against. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to item 4.3. Councillor Zanino, ministerial direction to initiate proposed amendment telecommunication infrastructure in Vidello Drive, The Vines. It's on page 295. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Note the order of the City of Swan made by the Honourable Minister for Planning pursuant to Section 76(1) of the Planning and Development Act 2005, signed on the 23rd of February 2022. 2. Nonetheless, and with full understanding of the gravity of the order, respectfully request that the Honourable Minister for Planning exercise her powers pursuant to Section 212 of the Planning and Development Act 2005, so that it is the Minister herself that initiates the amendment to the City of Swan's Local Planning Scheme number 17, as opposed to the Council of the City of Swan. 3. Record the reason for changing the staff recommendation and resisting the Minister's order is so that the residents of the Vines Estate, whom opposed the proposed amendment number 191, clearly understand that it is the Honourable Minister causing the amendment to be initiated and not the Council of the City of Swan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Henderson. Is there anyone against? Councillor Catalano, you have a question?
Sorry.
So this motion basically moves the decision-making over to the Minister. Is that what we're doing here?
Yep.
Moving the...
Well, the Minister will have the final say anyhow.
No, but in this motion, are we moving the decision from Council to the Minister?
Yep.
That's right. Yep. Great. Thank you.
Well, I don't see it that way, but that's fine. Anyone against the motion? Thank you. You wish to debate it?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Councillor Zanino, you've got 3 minutes to open your debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I'll make it very short. This item was debated at Council previously and it was supported unanimously to refuse the proposed amendment. Therefore, the Minister has now come back and basically given the order that the City initiate the scheme amendment. By the Minister requesting that the City of Swan initiate the amendment, when the City of Swan unanimously supported or refused the amendment previously, it just means that the City of Swan will be looked upon by its residents, ratepayers, community of the Vines, that it affects as if the City of Swan has now changed its mind and the City is initiating this amendment. I think that the order has come from directly from the Minister, and I think that the Minister needs to make the amendment herself so that, as I said in the reasons for changing the recommendation, that it is the Minister that is wanting this, not the City of Swan.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson is the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I think we've really got to get a handle on the enormity of this proposal. It isn't that you want to put a tower in one little spot, perhaps near a club centre or the like. It's a rezoning of the whole area. The community came out really solidly and said, well, hang on a minute, the impact or the potential impact to our community of multiple towers on all the extremities, perhaps, of all of those thin bits of land is real. And once that amendment is done, and if it's done over the whole lot, it is very real. So we said at the last time we dealt with this, no, hang on, we're not going to let that happen. And as Councillor Zanino said, I want to go back to another time, about the 1990s roughly, when in this chamber we debated an issue to do with the development of the northeast corridor around the Brabham area today. And the council said there are significant water issues there, and they said, no, we don't want to.
What's your point of order? Thank you.
I'm coming to the relevance, which is about saying no to the Minister.
Thank you. If you can continue, I rule there is
Thank
no
you.
point of order. Make your point quickly, though, Councillor Henderson.
Time's running out. Thank you, Mayor. The point is that at that time, the council unanimously said no to development. And the Minister actually dragged the whole council up to Dumas House and said, you will tick this box. Well, I still didn't tick the box, but a whole lot of the others did roll over. The point I make is that I don't believe this council should simply roll over because the Minister says you will do it, because the Minister is ultimately going to tick it off anyhow. And under the Telecommunications Act, once this is done, there will be effectively no say whatsoever for the community. So I do believe strongly that we should say no and let the Minister deal with it as she needs to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Speak. What's your amendment, Councillor Kiley?
My amendment is that we take out herself that and replace it with choose whether or not to initiate. Take out herself that and replace with choose whether or not to initiate the amendment.
I'm just trying to see where that fits into the...
Point 2, third line down. Yeah. So if I can, it would read, respectfully request that the Honourable Minister for Planning exercise her powers pursuant to Section 212 of the Planning and Development Act 2005 so that it is the Minister herself, who chooses whether or not to. We need a who as well. I don't want to make it, basically I don't want to make it a fait accompli or encourage her to initiate the amendment. I'm just letting her choose whether or not to do it.
First of all, I'll see if it's acceptable to the mover and the seconder, and they're indicating it's not.
Mr Mayor.
You've got to turn that off.
Thank you, Councillor Zanino.
Mr Mayor, I can't accept it because, as
you don't have to say anything more. Councillor Kiley's got an amendment. I'll ask if there's a seconder to the amendment. Being no seconder, the amendment lapses. So we're back to the substantive motion. I'll ask if there's any other speakers for or against the motion. Councillor Johnson?
I've got a question.
Question?
It was partly answered by one of the speakers. Is there a risk of any blowback, or any impact on council through passing this motion? So, for instance, I understand Councillor Henderson said that councillors were all forced to attend Dumas House, and be told to sign some document.
Mr. Russell, did you understand the question, and can you throw any further light on the issue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did understand the question. Look, I think very simply the council's best place to answer the question itself to decide, is it worth, in my view, provoking the ire of the minister? And my answer to that is no. The minister has made it clear here that she's not committing to the amendment, but if the council doesn't initiate it, she'll be forced to do it herself, and that has implications certainly, I believe.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Catalano?
Yes, actually, I was opposed to it, and you forgot to ask me to
well, I did ask
get my
if there's any
opposing
other
speech,
speakers,
but
so
it's okay. Don't worry
you
about
have
it.
3 minutes.
The thing is actually the reason why I asked if what this motion was about was answered in the mover's speech, and I must say that actually I do actually support your stance totally 100%, and in fact I'm no longer in opposition because I was under the right. What's he doing? I was under the that we were somehow having to make this decision, but in fact we'd made it, and that you were going to push it back to the minister, and I think you're right actually. So I just wanted to say that in fact I'm going to change my mind on it because I misunderstood the motion in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against, councillors? Councillor Kiley.
Mayor, I will be voting for this motion. I just want to make it clear that it's somewhat ambiguous in such that we are telling the minister to initiate the amendment in the wording. It could be read that way, but nevertheless, I agree with the intent of the motion and will be supporting it.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? And Councillor Zanino, you're right to reply. Thank you.
I'll keep it very short, Mr. Mayor. I understand where Councillor Kiley is coming from, and we're not actually telling the minister to support it or to initiate it, but the minister has given us an order which is, in the eyes of the community, going to be seen as we are the baddies rather than... So the minister can refuse to initiate it, which would be the sensible thing to do. But if she decides to initiate it, then she has to take the responsibility of her decision, just like we take responsibility for decisions that we make in this chamber.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those councillors in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congdon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Richardson and Councillor McCulloch. Please note Councillor Kiley had left the chamber, and I'm... Which way were you voting, Councillor Kiley?
For the motion.
It was all for the motion other than myself, so the motion is passed. That takes... Sorry, Councillor Richardson?
Can that vote be counted if you left the chamber and then walked in after we'd already raised our hands?
Well, I hadn't counted my own vote at that stage. So Councillor Kiley had come back in the council before I counted my vote against, so I was happy to take his vote. And either way, it wouldn't matter. It was either 13 or 14 to 1. Okay, it takes us to item 4.4, proposed amendment, local planning scheme, Cranwood Crescent, Middle Swan, and it's Councillor Howlett. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, this is quite long.
Well, perhaps if we can take it as read,
great.
other than
Thank you.
the parts you're changing, which I believe is the red sections.
Correct.
Thank you. If you just read out the red items.
Yes. So, that the council resolved to 1, not support the proposed amendment number 209 to local planning scheme number 17 in the manner submitted as a rezoning from general industrial to residential. And 2, rezone lot 900 on DP 405292 Cranwood Crescent, Middle Swan, from general industrial to residential development.
And the reason, please.
And the reason, which I think is here. Reason is to address the complex requirements for this proposed development through the provision of a detailed structure plan.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Prodovnik. Is there anyone against? Are you against, Councillor? You wish to debate it? Yes, I do. Thank you. You've got 3 minutes to open your debate. Thank you, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This simple amendment proposed is a positive step, and it will go a long way to producing positive outcomes for both the established Vivash community and the next stage of residential development by Hesperia. Councillors, it is important to remember that this is not a greenfield site, and it is important to remember that this is a complex site with existing industrial operations, so therefore it can only be viewed as a complex amendment. A structure plan will address the following community issues and concerns raised: the extension of Everline Street or Everline Road, the requirement for a minimum 10% public open space, emission mitigation from the on-site brickwork operations, environmental impacts on the sensitive threatened ecological community, and will allow the development plans to go out for public consultation. As an established, engaged and proud community, the people of Vivash have been very clear in voicing what concerns them. You have all received the emails, and when you read them, you can see the community acknowledge their suburb will grow to accommodate this new development. However, they want it to be the very best development possible for both existing and new residents. And I believe this is what Hesperia would want too. As a certified B Corp developer, Hesperia has positioned itself as an environmental leader in the Perth market. To achieve a B Corp certification, they have undergone an independent verification process demonstrating a positive impact on community, stakeholders and environment. A structured plan will bring this all together and allow a more in-depth analysis of the proposed development, its stages and how it proposes to fit into the community of Vivash. Please support my motion. Let's get this structure plan out so we can all ensure we get the very best for Vivash.
Thank you. Just before I call on the seconder to debate, I was under the belief that the only changes were the bold ones in red. That is not correct. When I look at the officer's recommendation, points 1, 2 and points 3, 4, 5, 6 are also different. So I'll just make that point and ask if anyone needs the time to read all those points of Councillor Howlett's motion before we continue debate. Everyone happy? Okay, Councillor Prodovnik, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
This motion agrees with all the points the developer makes, and it supports a rezoning to residential. This motion just takes that one extra step to classify it as residential development. That classification will enable the creation of a structure plan to address a whole range of important environmental, safety and amenity concerns residents have repeatedly raised. This motion also captures the need for another road to be created, so there's another access route from Vivash, and this is critical to allow emergency and other vehicles to move safely. A structure plan will help address this long-cited safety concern both by the residents and DFES, and it will ensure that there's more than just one road for people to get in and out. Please support this motion, which is a win-win for both the developer and residents, in that it allows a change of zoning to residential, as the developer wants, and it also allows the creation of a structure plan to address environment, safety and amenity concerns that the residents want. Please support this motion.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Congredon.
Well, thank you, Mayor. To be very brief, the conclusion on page 323 is the important one for me, that the initiation of Amendment 209 will facilitate advertising and consultation with a view to enable future considerations for the development of this portion of former Midland Brick operations. And it just goes on from that section down to, should Council support the proposal as a standard amendment, it will be referred to WAPC and the EPA for comment and consent to proceed for advertising and or further environmental reporting. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Catalano.
I'm going to support it because this motion, unlike the officer's report, actually flags quite a lot of the concerns that have been raised to us that relate to the amenity and also to the lack of public open space, roads, and also the environmental concerns. And to get that right, we need to actually push that forward here with the structure plan. I mean, the idea of actually letting this go through to the state government without some oversight right now and putting in some, dare I say again, standards, or at least asking for some standards before it goes on, that means that we sort of have to wait then for it to come back, and it can come back, and then the argument will be, well, why didn't you say something about it initially? So that's why it has to be said about, that's why we have to deal with it now. If we're not happy with the issues that have been raised, then we need to flag that with the WAPC or wherever it's going to next. Even maybe it'll be flagged to the developer, and they might want to consider that at this stage. So it's about flagging the issues right at the outset. It's not like letting it go forward without having them properly flagged and formally flagged. We need to have these things right out there, front and centre, for the developer, for the community, and for the state government, the planning department, the WAPC, to know that these are the issues and these are the issues that are going to have to be addressed. So they've got to be right up there, front and centre. And then there were other things to do with drainage from the proposed development site into the conservation category, the C-class reserve, that is the Evelyn Reserve. That's actually a City of Swan reserve. I mean, there's lots of other things that the structure plan will be able to give us some certainty on, and then we don't have to worry about it coming back later on and having to argue after it's been through WAPC or where some sort of green light's been given to this. So it's about really putting in standards. We need to do that now. We really do have to do that. I mean, I've seen too many low standard developments right across the city, and it's got to stop. It really has got to stop. So that's all I've got to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Being no other speakers, Councillor Howell, you have 3 minutes for right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I suppose what I really want to point out to you is the reason for moving it from a residential zoning to a residential development is that the residential development means that we will get a structure plan, and that's what we really want to see. And also highlighting the fact that it's not a standard amendment, it is a complex amendment. It has an existing industrial operations on site, which is the Midland Brick operations. It wasn't that long ago that forced the closure of Middle Swan Primary School. I'm sure some of the councillors sitting in the chamber today were here when that happened. So we must make sure that this amendment goes through as a complex amendment to address those concerns, those pollution concerns. Everline Road, now it was 2016 that DFAS said no more subdivisions until a secondary access road is constructed. I've received notification today that the plans have been submitted by Hesperia, which is great, for this extension of the road. However, they've not yet been approved, and there is no timeline yet confirmed. So We want to make sure that we're in control of that happening and have that information to us. So that is why a structure plan is important, and that is why I need you to support this motion to change the zoning of it to a residential development and a complex amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Brodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, myself, Councillor Knight, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Richardson, which I think is 11, and there was 4 against. Those against, can you raise your hands? It was Councillor McCulloch, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Parry and Councillor Congdon. Motion's passed 11-4. Thank you, councillors. Takes us to item 4.5, SAT reconsideration, the RA report for a educational establishment, Ostrom Drive, Henley Brook. Councillor Richardson, you have declared a financial or indirect financial interest and you're required to leave the chamber. Thank you. Once Councillor Richardson's out of the chamber, I'll hand over to you, Councillor Congdon, to move your motion. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I can just refer councillors to page 35 of the running sheet and the item 2 in red, which says not to recommend that council recommend the Metro Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel approve the applicant's art concept because it fails to comply with the requirements of the City of Swan Local Planning Policy Pol-LP-1.10 provision of public art.
Thank you. You're seconding that, Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Question, Councillor Johnson.
Is there a reason?
You've got a reason. Thank you, Councillor Congdon.
Sorry, yes, there should be a reason there. Thank you, Councillor. And it is the council needs to continue with its provision of public art policy and not deviate.
Thank you. I'll ask again. Is there anyone against? Being no one against, sorry, you've missed the boat, Councillor Catalano. Yes, I looked around twice and I was starting to speak. I'm sorry, I'm making a ruling. No, I wasn't. There's no one against. I declare it carried. Can we recall Councillor Richardson to the chamber, please? Once I have those 2 councillors back in the chambers, councillors will be on item 4.6, Responsible Authority Report, Childcare Premises in Amazon Drive, Beachborough. It's on page 423. There'll be a proposed motion by Councillor Kiley, but if you can just wait till I have those other 2 councillors back in the chamber. Thank you, Councillor Kiley. Thank you, Councillor Congdon. Councillor Richardson, when you resume your seat, we'll be on item 4.6. It's the daycare RA report on Amazon Drive, Beachborough, on page 423. And it's proposed motion by Councillor Kiley. Thank you, Councillor Kiley.
Council, my alternatives are that Council resolve to 1, endorse the officer recommendation on the application to the Metro Outer Joint Development Assessment Panel, subject to the addition of the following conditions and renumber accordingly. Condition 12, that the applicant is to construct structurally suitable protective bollards for the length of the playground as it fronts Amazon Drive and Cherwell Avenue. And condition 15, that a suitably engineered barrier be constructed along the car park wall and the adjoining to the adjoining property, should read, to the adjoining property number 1240. 2, record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation are to prevent the possible incursion of a vehicle into the playground, and 2, to prevent cars damaging the fence of the immediate neighbour when parking.
I have a seconder. Councillor Catalano. Is there anyone against? I'm against, but I don't wish to debate it. If there's no one else against, I declare the motion carried 14-1. Thank you. That takes us to item 4.7, Lifestyle Village Park Home, Adria Drive in Henley Brook. It's on page 448. Councillor Kyle, you have an alternative motion.
Mayor, my alternative is that Council resolve to 1, adopt the officer recommendation with the addition of the following condition and renumber accordingly. 3, prior to construction, submit a range of roofing materials for approval to the satisfaction of the CEO that would be considered light-coloured and ensure no dark-coloured roofing material is constructed, with the exception of solar panels. 2, record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is to reduce the heat island effect, which will also reduce the energy requirement for cooling in the summer months.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parry. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? Councillor Bowman, you do. Councillor Kyle, you have 3 minutes for your debate. Thank you.
That's pretty obvious, Mayor. Thank you. I'll just leave it as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parry is the seconder.
Mr Mayor, I've got confirmation from the developer that they are acceptable to this change, so therefore I ask it to be put to a vote, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So you're asking that the vote be put before debate. Okay, I believe I need 11 councillors. So there's a procedural motion that the motion be put. Those councillors...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. The
What's your
seconder can't put a procedural motion.
Okay, in the fact that we haven't got a procedural motion now before us, Councillor Bowman, you've got 3 minutes for your debate. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, councillors, I'll be foreshadowing a deferral motion to next month. Councillors, we haven't got all the information. It keeps changing as we go. Is it $4 million? Is it $5 million? Is it $8 million? Is it $68 million? Councillors getting information at the last minute, apparently by email, apparently verifying it. We should not be making these decisions with information that has been provided to the city incorrectly. I have reasons why I think it's been provided incorrectly. Let's just pause it for next council meeting, defer it, and then we can come back to it when we've seen that information and we can digest that information.
So you're foreshadowing a deferment, Councillor Bowman. Thank you. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Congdon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am in favour, and I think it's a fine thing that's been moved to have a look at the light-coloured roofing structure for this development. I think we have all the information that we actually need for this park home development, and I think we should let the developers get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, in the report it talks about $5 million. Can staff tell us, is it still $5 million or is it more? And what's the implications there?
Mr van der Linde.
Mr Mayor, thank you through you. Mr Mayor, we've received an email from the developer after 5 this afternoon, which email went to the CEO and Megan as well, in which they've indicated that they have reviewed the cost of the development that they applied for through the DA. So on their application at the moment, the cost is indicated as $5 million. They've reviewed that and indicated that it is $8 million now, and they've indicated that they are modifying the application form to reflect that. And if the motion is then supported, it will then mean that condition 6 on page 456, which refers to the public art, the 50,000 there in 6A will then change to 80,000.
Thank you. Another question by Councillor Congdon, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Bowman.
A question through you, Mr Mayor, to the staff. Does the change in the sum change the development structure at all other than the provision of public art?
No, it doesn't. It's confirming. So you would remember that there was an email early on in the week that clarified what was included and what was excluded in the DA. So this 8 million represent what is now included in the DA application.
Hang on. Councillor Bowman was next for a question.
I have more than one before I get cut off again, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, question to probably the Manager of Governance. So the recommendation we're approving here doesn't mention anything about increases in fees, doesn't mention any increases in public art. So if we approve this motion, we've missed out. Is that correct?
Thank you, Ms Albrecht, when you're ready. And Mr Russell.
Thank you. I think what Councillor Bowman is asking, Mr Mayor, is that if we approve the motion, the recommendation before Council, unless we modify conditions 6, A and B to reflect that the contribution amount is $80,000, yes, we will miss out $30,000.
Mr Mayor, my next question is, have councillors been provided the information before this meeting to make a fully informed decision about the new valuation, or was that only provided to a select few?
Mr Vanderlyn.
Mr Mayor, as I said, the information was received at 20 past 5 this afternoon. The email came through to me. I haven't sent it out to all councillors yet, but it will be. It can be.
Mr Mayor.
Councillor Bowman has the floor. Councillors, continue. Thank you.
And Mr Mayor, my final question is the governance question. Is it good governance to be making changes with not all the information in front of councillors on the run at a council meeting?
I don't think that's a decision for councillors to make. Councillor Kiley, you were next, followed by Councillor Henderson.
Mayor, am I allowed to amend my own motion to recognise the extra $3 million?
No, but I think that was agreed by the applicants. Well, you're moving that way, Councillor Jones, to change it from 50.
First, but okay.
Well, I didn't know what your question was going to be, Councillor Henderson. You said you had a question, not a moving amendment. So Councillor Jones is moving that the 50,000 figure in item 6.A and 6.B be amended to 80,000. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Henderson, is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried and becomes part of the substantive motion. Did you have a question now, Councillor Henderson, or not?
That's what I was going to move. Thank you.
Thank you.
It wasn't a question.
I'll ask again, is there any other speakers for or against the motion? Question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr Mayor, is an application fee paid at the beginning of submitting this application, and is that application fee based on $5 million, and therefore, if it's supposed to be based on $8 million, have they not paid the full application fee, and should we then not be considering this item until it is paid?
Mr Russell or Mr Vanderlyn, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In the general course, an application is made, an invoice for a fee based on the percentage of the estimated cost of development on the form is generated. You pay the money and we progress an application. In this instance, we've received the fee, which equates to the estimated cost of development being $5 million. As Mr Vanderlyn has indicated, the developers have revised that assessment, and I suppose the council will be taking on faith, Mr Mayor, if it makes a decision tonight, that the applicant party will make good their revision of the development cost and pay the balance of the difference.
Thank you. You have a question, Councillor Henderson?
No, further amendment.
What's your further amendment?
That the applicant pay the difference in the application fee upon approval of this recommendation.
So what's that, a point 20, is it? Well, I know, but I'm just trying to work out where it's going to fit in with the conditions or with the recommendation. Either through you, Mr CEO, or one of the planning staff, Councillor Henderson's moving a motion that the applicant pay the difference in the application fee prior to issuing approval between the $5 and the $8 million. Mr. Russell?
Mr Mayor, if I might propose a solution, I would recommend that the Council resolve to delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to approve the application as recommended, subsequent to the payment of the balance of the application fee. Because then you are not actually issuing a decision that once you've issued a decision, you can't take it back. And if they don't pay it, I'm not suggesting for a second the applicants won't, but you've got the safeguard.
Thank you. And if I can just ask you to try and repeat that so the minute clerk gets it right.
Through you, Mr Mayor, suggest the recommendation reads as follows. That the Council resolve to 1. Delegate to the Chief Executive Officer authority to grant approval for the proposed lifestyle village home park, Park Home Park.
You can just slow down a little bit.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
People can't type or write as fast as people can speak.
When we're at Park Home Park, I'll recommence.
I would have just said the application because it's in the, that's what we're talking about.
Henley Brooker, then I would suggest subject to the payment of the outstanding balance of the application fees and the following conditions. Perhaps, Mr Mayor, for absolute clarity, when we say the balance of the application fees for a $8 million development, so we're clear what the amount is that needs to be.
And were there conditions after that, Mr. Russell, or was that the end of the amendment?
And then, obviously, as you've indicated, Mr Mayor, the modification to condition 6A to read $80,000 and the same for 6B. That figure to be.
Thank you. I'll ask now for a seconder to that amendment. Councillor Jones. Is there anyone against the amendment as moved by Councillor Henderson with the assistance of staff? Being no one against the amendment, that becomes part of the substantive motion. And I'll ask, is there any speakers for or against the motion? Thank you. Question, Councillor Bowman.
Can I please be advised, because of me just seeing the motion get drafted on the run, how much have we delegated to the CEO? What's the difference? I'd like to know that so I can make a fully informed decision before voting on this item.
The difference between the $5 million application fee and an $8 million application fee in, I'm not going to hold you an exact figure, Mr. Russell, but close enough would be fantastic if you can provide it.
I'm sorry, Mr Mayor, I don't want to misinform the council or Councillor Bowman. I haven't got the adjustment in terms of the speak, well, I would hasten to say if it's an extra $3 million, which is an extra 50%, it will be probably 50% extra fee.
Thank you. I can't assist any further, Councillor Bowman, at the moment. Fine. I'll ask again, are there any other speakers for or against the motion? If not, Councillor Kiley, you have a right of reply. Thank you. Put it to the vote. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Congredon, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which is 10. And the 5 against were Councillor Bowman, myself, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. The motion is passed 10-5. Thank you, councillors. That takes us to the next item, which is item 4.8, proposed demolition of existing dwelling and new replacement building in Mere Street, Guildford. It's on page 476. Councillor Johnson, you're first. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. My motion is that Council resolve to adopt the officer recommendation with the addition of the following condition. 12. An archival recording of the 1960s building that is to be demolished is to be provided to the City. 2. Record the reason for changing the officer recommendation is that all buildings in Guildford that are demolished should be the subject of an archival recording.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knight. Is there anyone against? There is. Oh, hang on. We'll get to that in a minute. So I have councillors against. You wish to debate it? We do. Before we open the debate, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Henderson, you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wondered who's going to pay for the cost of this?
Mr Russell or Mr van der Linde? Who would pay for the archival recording of the 1960s buildings be demolished?
Through Mr Mayor, the applicant would facilitate that and pay for it.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Question for Mr Russell. What is the approximate cost of that, the cost of the applicant for that?
Mr Russell, have you...
I'm not certain, Mr Mayor. The only thing that we're dealing with here is really just a set of photographs to be taken. So in this age with a digital camera, I would suggest it would be almost negligible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to end the debate. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the city planning staff have got this right because in the local planning policy, Guildford Conservation Precinct, it says at 5.3, citing, a critical factor that influences character is building siting in relation to lot boundaries, particularly street and side lot boundaries. Maintaining the predominant setbacks in the street can readily reinforce the character of the street. So that's what it says in our document here. At 5.3.2 general siting, it says new buildings shall be located parallel to the street and follow established street and side building setbacks in the street. Remember, this is just Guildford Council, so it's not anywhere else. And this is why the officers are recommending refusal to allow new plans to be submitted to move the building back 1.5 metres to make it compliant. I agree with the delegation to the CEO as it will reduce the amount of business coming to council. So what this is about, councillors, in the Guildford Conservation Policy, it says that houses on a street should typically all have the same setback, and that's what this is about. The staff have said this house is too far forward, it needs to go back a bit. And if you look at the plans, you'll see there's plenty of room to actually shuffle this house back a little bit, or possibly they could change the design to make a slightly smaller study. But it's a relatively small change, and that's why the revised plans will be delegated to the CEO to be approved. The small change I'm proposing to the officer's recommendation is to add archival recording of the 1960s building that is to be demolished. 1960s buildings don't have much heritage value now, but in the future people may wish to know what was on the site before the building that is to be approved tonight. Archival recording of buildings to be demolished is required in the existing Guildford local planning policy at section 6.2.2e. It says archival recording in the case of demolition. In the case of a proposal for demolition of a heritage place, the City may require the applicant, as a condition of approval, to submit an archival record.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Prior to the commencement of demolition. In most cases, this would include a plan with photographs of the place in its setting, elevations, with a photograph of each room, and can all be done electronically these days, councillors. The 1960s building may not be a heritage place, but the whole of Guildford since June 2019 is a heritage place, and so it is reasonable to consider archival recording. Given modern technology, this archival recording could be done at very low cost to the applicant. It will help preserve the history of Guildford into the future for all West Australians. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knight as a seconder.
Yeah, nothing to add, Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Zanino.
I have a question.
Question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Johnson just made a remark saying that, in his opinion, all buildings have to have the same setback. My question is, do all the buildings in this locality have the same setback?
Mr Russell, Mr Van der Linde, if you can assist.
Through Mr Mayor, I think the report makes clear that the setbacks of the relevant buildings on this side of Mears Street have setbacks that vary from about 6 to 8.5. So the answer to the question obviously is no, they don't all have absolute uniform setbacks.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion. Councillor Kiley, you have 3 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got 3 minutes, councillors. If you look on page 39, on page 40, I have an alternative motion, and I've spent some time going through the proposal to see where it is inconsistent with the existing policy and our draft policy. And the first 4 points, as per in terms of the scale of the building, it's inconsistent. That's recognised as in the officer's report. Page 482 of the officer's report says it's inconsistent. Point 2, the setback of the building. That's why officers are recommending we actually reject this. Just remember, the officer's recommendation is to reject it. Point 3, the main houses of large expanses of metal cladding, walls of metal cladding. And I just want to point out, if you look at this little mat on front of your desk, this dark coloured mat, it's a monument colour bond is effectively that colour. We heard from Councillor Congdon how he supports the light coloured materials and commends it and spoke glowingly of the proposal for light coloured materials. I hope that he would see the value in not supporting this dark, large wall of monument colour bond being erected in Guildford. For environmental reasons, we should reject this. This is inappropriate in an urban environment that we're putting a heat sink area into this area. The red clay brick, the Marseille roofing tiles is the appropriate one, or a Zincalume. We shouldn't be approving this dark colour in itself. There's overlooking issues, councillors, if you look on the page, the plans looking to the north and I believe the south as well, that the windows, there appears to be overlooking large windows which will permit the applicant to look into the neighbour's yard. I mean, we're overlooking other issues. Councillor Johnson's talking about taking
1 minute left,
taking some photos of it, but please, I really encourage you to support the people of Guildford. Councillor Zanino was courageous in standing up to the Minister a few moments ago and taking on the Minister in respect of supporting the people of the Vines. Well, the people of Guildford expect us to stand by the heritage policy that are there to protect the people of Guildford. We're not just about the people of Vines, this is about the people of Guildford. We shouldn't be here just to support one person because they've got an application that doesn't necessarily suit. There are a number of items on page 40. The front windows, there's unacceptable sight lines, the proposed fence is inconsistent with the existing policy in terms of its style. Councillors, please do not go ahead and support this. We're standing up for people in the Vines, we're standing up for other people in Midland. Councillor Johnson was the one who actually put forward the draft policy and said what a great draft policy this was, and we need to put it out to the community. But here we are, he's rejecting everything that's in there. So please do not support this.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor McCulloch. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, city officers cited setbacks as a reason for refusal. The rest of the build complies. The proposal, everything, is entirely compliant with the overarching planning framework. Councillors, the proposed dwelling was entirely compliant with the R codes. Councillors, the Heritage Council support the application and raise no objections to the proposed setbacks. We need to consider the context of the entire street and the surrounding area, including those immediate properties. I do know Councillor Kiley did cite some of those aspects that he's just talked about, but there were no objections from the adjacent owners. Councillors, we need to look at those setbacks and look at that greater vision in the context of our long-term vision for Guildford and it as a heritage precinct. The 4 metre setback is not only reasonable, and I've checked this and I've spoken to a heritage architect of 40 years who's had significant influence through Fremantle and also Guildford. So the 4 metre setback is not only reasonable, it's in fact a better design response than the one which just follows the applicable setback rule. It's also a sensitive transition between the small setbacks of both the west side of the southern house and its garage and shed and the larger setback of number 4 Mears Street. Councillors, those design responses, those sensitive transitions need to be considered all the time with this being compliant, but in the context of the longer-term vision to protect
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Our unique and precious heritage of Guildford, whilst accommodating those new house builds that respond architecturally to Guildford and what is there. Councillors, I ask you to consider and think about, we have a motion coming up. City officers have recommended refusal and there's an alternative to approve, one which the Heritage Council object to quite considerably. Let's have a think about the longer term vision and what is relevant and relative to moving forward.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? No other speakers, then your right to reply. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, it seems like an argument about setbacks. Look, in any street in Guildford, you'll find that houses have different setbacks, but there is a predominant setback. And this house is significantly in front of the predominant setback. And that's why the officers have recommended a redesign, not to change the house in any way whatsoever, just to move it back 1.5 metres and to delegate that to the CEO. I think it's the most reasonable compromise. I think the house is quite a good design, and to respond to the windows and setback commentary. Councillors, if you look on page 494, you notice that very unusually for a new house anywhere in the city of Swan, you'll see facing north, on the north elevation, a large amount of glass on the ground floor. Well, that's solar performance, so you're getting the benefits of the winter sun. It's actually a really good design, this house. So I think it'll be a pleasure to live in. The officers have made a recommendation. They're the planning experts, and they maintain that to be aligned with the current Guildford Conservation Planning Policy, it needs to move back by 1.5 metres. And that's a simple change to make. So, councillors, I suggest you support the officer's recommendation with a small change of archival recording. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those councillors in favour of Councillor Bowman, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Prodovnik, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. That is 6. The motion fails and there are 9 against. You get all those names? Thank you, Megan. Thank you. Next motion is by Councillor Zanino. And I'll take it as all the items read because we're running short of time,
Yep.
Councillor Zanino. Has everyone got the run sheet or used the whiteboard? Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I rise to move that the Council resolve to 1. Approve the application for demolition of the existing dwelling at Lot 4, Number 2, Mere Street, Guildford, and the reconstruction of a new dwelling subject to the following conditions. And 2, record the reasons for changing the officer's recommendation is that the proposed setback of the new dwelling is considered to be consistent with other structures within the street and will not have any adverse impact on the streetscape.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCulloch. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Zanino, you have 3 minutes for your debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I'll keep it short. As you heard at the beginning of this meeting, there was a petition which was presented to Council, which included all the neighbours, 12 I think it was, that all signed the petition in favour of this application, and nobody has any objections. I think that, as has been stated, the proposal is totally compliant, and the only contention at this point in time is the setback, which is 1.5 metres. As has already been stated, the setbacks in that locality vary. There are no set rules that all the buildings that currently exist have a predominant setback. And having a setback of 1.5 metres or imposing the setback is totally inappropriate for this proposal, as all you'd be doing is you'd be extending the front yard by 1.5 metres, which is basically more garden space and probably wouldn't be utilised. Whereas if the 1.5 metres is at the back of the block, then it is an area that would be utilised because that is where the occupants, the owners, spend most of their time. That's where the kids would be using it as a playground, and that's where you need the extra space.
You have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley said that we need to, support and come out and support the community, the people of Guildford. Well, these are community. These are people that actually live in Guildford, and that's what we're doing. We're actually supporting them. So, councillors, I think that it's totally a storm in a teacup. This is not going to have any impact whatsoever to the local community, and I urge you to support this motion and vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCulloch is the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, can I remind you that the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage provided their support for the application in its current form. And the Heritage Impact Assessment concluded that the proposed dwelling would have no discernible impact on the existing streetscape. That existing verge is approximately 7 metres wide. In addition, just to note, no footpath exists along Mears Street, which clearly defines lots from verges. Councillors, the proposal was entirely compliant with the R codes. The setbacks of existing dwellings on Mears Street vary greatly. If you had made the time to read through some of the random and differing setbacks, you'll see that what is proposed here makes sense. Councillors, the Guildford Conservation Precinct policy does not stipulate a specified setback, and the current proposal is compliant with the R20 coding. only that small portion of the proposed dwelling, being that office and study, encroaches into that 6 metre setback. So, councillors, let's consider the context of the entire street. As I said to you before, let's have a look at the design responses that we need to be looking at in these areas, and let's look at the sensitive transitions that need to be considered as we look at new builds to complement the precious heritage that we have in Guildford.
Thank you. Speaker against the motion, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, councillors, there's a reason why we've got a special local planning policy, Guildford Conservation Precinct, and why we are renewing this. It's because Guildford is uniquely different, and anybody buying a property in Guildford needs to understand there are a different set of planning rules applying Guildford. So I know some councillors think that these planning rules for Guildford are arcane and don't matter, and we should ignore them, which is the argument I'm hearing.
What's your point of order? Thank you, Councillor McCulloch.
Councillor Johnson making reference that we think that these planning laws are archaic, and that's a generalisation.
I don't think he quite said that. So I'll rule there is no point of order. If you continue, Councillor Johnson, but just be careful of the language you use.
Well, I thought I used excellent language. These rules apply in Guildford, and they're there for a reason. They're there to protect Guildford. So they don't apply in Ellenbrook, they don't apply in Bullsbrook, they don't apply in Joondalup. They only apply in Guildford. And if you're buying a house in Guildford, this is something you need to accept. There's a different set of rules here, and the rules are there to protect our precious heritage. Now, what it says about setbacks in the officers' report, remember, the officers are about things like setbacks rather than, unlike the Heritage Council, I don't think particularly interested in that aspect of it. The proposed street setback of 4 metres is just over half that of the predominant setback for the street, and neither complies with the current policy nor the new draft policy. On the basis of the proposed siting, it is considered the proposed dwelling would have a discordant and adverse impact on the existing streetscape of Mears Street, and therefore should not be supported. So if we want to support our precious Guildford, we should not be supporting this application. City staff consider that the proposed dwelling, including the proposed double garage, would need to be further set back at least a minimum of 1.5 metres, so as to achieve a minimum front setback of 5.5 metres, close to the minimum setback of the existing dwellings on the street. So councillors, they're the professionals, they're the ones who've looked at it, they understand the planning policy, and what they've said is this building needs to move back by 1.5 metres. So councillors, if we're supporting the Guildford Conservation Policy and we genuinely think that Guildford is a great place, then we would not be supporting this motion. We'd be recognising that we need to support...
You have 30 seconds left, thank you, Councillor Johnson.
We'd be recognising that we need to support the officer's recommendation, and I'll be foreshadowing the officer's recommendation if, in the event that either of this motion or the next one fails. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Mr. Russell.
Sorry, Councillor Kylie. Councillor Richardson's got the floor and is asking a question.
Can I confirm whether the Guildford Association was sent a letter and whether they responded to this particular application?
Mr. Russell, you aware?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, they were consulted, and yes, they did make a submission in objection to the application.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against the motion? Councillor Kylie.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm just, if you would give me 10 seconds, I will bring up the Guildford Association report, and here it is here. No, I haven't got it. Councillor Howlett says she's getting it for me. I think it was sent to some of us.
You can continue with the debate.
I will, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this is just not about the setback alone. There are a number of items on this building which are inconsistent with the policy. That as Councillor Johnson said, we have to, it's different. In Guildford, these are the rules. But councillors, we are the ones who put these rules in place. We're the ones who actually put the draft policy out. We're the ones who paid Element a hell of a lot of money to go out and get a new draft policy together to put this together so we can actually get the construction in Guildford on some normal, some consistent level. This is a very nice building, no doubt. It's a really nice building, but it's not consistent with Guildford. The metal cladding needs to be re-looked at. Please, on that basis alone, there is so much that can be approved on this building, but there are elements that just shouldn't be supported. For the same reason as Councillor Congdon didn't support the dark metal cladding on homes in Henley Brook, we shouldn't be supporting it here. It needs to be re-looked at. The shed is an expanse of metal cladding. Please, these things can be corrected. We shouldn't be just nodding it off. There are too many there. There's the fence, there's the colour of the cladding, there's the type of material they're using in terms of cladding. We put this policy together. We put the draft policy out. The Guildford Association do not support it. The Guildford Association talk about the siting, the scale, the frontage, the verge crossover is double width. The Guildford Conservation Policy talks about double front garages fronting the street should generally not be supported. There's no eaves on the building.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
The current policy that we have in place says that they should have eaves put on buildings. This building doesn't have eaves. It's a great style, but it's not suited to Guildford. Either we stand up for Guildford and its future, or we throw this whole thing out. We've currently got the draft policy out for consultation, and we're making a mockery of it by approving this building. We should just say anything goes. If we approve this building, we're at the point where basically anything goes. We spent this money with Element. Respect the money that the ratepayers' money we've used to do this draft policy. Knock this back for the moment, and let's see what improvements we can make to it to make sure it adheres to the policy. But the large expanses of effectively black colour-bond metal are just inappropriate, whether they be in Henley Brook or in Guildford. In that respect, it's a heat sink. Please reject it.
Thank you, Councillor Kiley. That's your 3 minutes. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I had a long time to consider the plans, and as Councillor Kiley's pointed out, I appreciate very much the design of the building and the amount of work that proponents have put into their forever home. Councillors, just hearing the proponents laughing in the audience just now only further demonstrates their lack of perhaps understanding of how hard we work in Guildford to, particularly my being on the Guildford Association past and the executive past, how much effort went into listing the town, how much effort has gone into protecting the style of housing, looking at the heritage structure, the plan, the investment I make in my own home. The design is a lovely modern design, incorporating features that could be reworked, and I have no objection to those. However, the cladding is substantially not part of the Guildford Conservation Policy, and I can't support this in its form. If there's a way of rejigging that, I'm more than welcome and open to looking at that, but there is no possibility that I can possibly accept this design, knowing how hard the association has worked, knowing how hard people in Guildford purposely look and look after their properties and promote the history of Guildford. This particular design doesn't fit into that conservation policy.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? And I'll ask the Deputy to take over the chair. I'm going to end the debate briefly. I support the motion by Councillor Zanino, and I've given due consideration to the petition handed in tonight, signed by 12 residents who live either in the street or very nearby, supporting it. I noted there were 3 objections, but I've also taken into consideration that both Councillor Johnson said, great design, good house. What they were debating about is a setback of about 1.5 metres. That's what you're talking about, councillor. So you may have your own view on the style and the colour of the materials of the house, but that's not why the officers said don't approve it.
Point of order through you, Deputy Mayor. We don't have our own view on the style of the house. We're given plans and it's clear what the style of the house is. We don't have our own view. It's there. It's dark metal cladding for most of the house. So I take offence to the fact that we're saying we just have a view of what the style of the house is. The style is there for all to see.
I think commentary's been made about the style and design of the house, so I'm going to not accept the point of order.
Thank you. Several councillors have mentioned the type of materials, the style and the design of the house, and that's why I raised it. That's one issue, but it's not the reason. And even Councillor Johnston said he'd support the officer's recommendation after he said it was a good design, because it's all about 1.5 metre setback. But when I look at the information that was handed out last week, the building next door on this photograph to the right has about in my estimation, about a 15-metre green colour-bond shed with a setback of 1 metre to Mere Street. 1 metre, and we're talking about a 4-metre setback. So that large shed, and I also noted, Councillor Kiley, you talked about fencing and other materials. It has a colour-bond fence in front of the green colour-bond shed, which would hide most of the setback. So I've got no issues with the plan that's been presented. I support the motion of Councillor Zanino, particularly in light that it's had so much support from other local Guildford residents. Yes, there were 3 objections and there were some objectors tonight here in the council, but on the overall assessment, I believe that the house will be set far enough back from the streetscape, particularly in view that the building next door has a 1 metre setback for a 15-metre length garage, which in my view will obscure much of the house. Thank you very much. I'll now ask Councillor Zanino for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I'll quickly just respond to a couple of things. Councillor Johnson basically was referring to the Guildford guidelines, and he says basically it does comply with the Guildford guidelines apart from the setback. As has been stated, the setbacks in the locality are very diverse, and they vary from property to property. Therefore, it may not have any, it will not have any adverse impact on the streetscape. Just going to Councillor Kiley's debate, Councillor Kiley said that it's not just about the setbacks. He says there is a number of items that are inconsistent, things such as metal cladding, fencing and materials, etc. If this was fact, then this would have been identified in the officer's report and in the officer's recommendation. But, councillors, I'm sure you all read the report and the recommendation. The officers have only identified the setbacks as a small issue, and the recommendation was to delegate to the Chief Executive Officer authority to approve a revised application that resites the proposed new dwelling 1.5 metres back. Councillors, as I have stated, 1.5 metres is insignificant, especially as Councillor Lucas, the Mayor, has stated, and you can have a look on page 489. The shed is virtually right on the boundary, and you won't be able to see it unless you're driving and you're right in front of the building. So it's going to have no effect whatsoever. Therefore, I urge you to support this recommendation and approve it.
Thank you. I'm now going to put the motion. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. Just let me count the hands. You can just keep them up for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The motion is lost. Those against, if you can raise your hands. There's Councillor Bowman, Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. So that's 8-7. Councillor Johnson, you foreshadowed a motion, I believe.
Councillor Kiley.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Kiley.
If I may, Mayor, just in the last 30 seconds of the meeting, move my motion to refuse. I think we've gone through a number of issues there. If I can, basically, if I'm allowed to move it tonight.
You can move it.
Councillors, I ask that you support this motion that Council resolve to 1, refuse the application for demolition of the existing dwelling on Lot 4, Number 2, Mears Street, Guildford, and the construction of a new dwelling for the following reasons. Number 1, the proposed scale of the building is discordant with the characteristic development in the area or as viewed from the street as per draft policy and as stated in the officer's report on page 482, if you'd like to look at that. Number 2, the front setback of the proposed building is inconsistent with the current draft policy as recognised in the officer report as per their reasons for refusal. Number 3, the main house use of large expanses of metal cladding is inconsistent with contributory buildings in the area and will not be supported. It says it will not be supported under the draft policy and is additionally inconsistent under the old policy 6.4.2e, being in sharp contrast to the surrounding buildings. Number 4, the proposed shed is considered a large expanse of metal cladding and will not be supported under the new policy as per the officer's report. They quote the officer's report there, and is additionally inconsistent under the old policy 6.4.2e, being in sharp contrast to the surrounding buildings. 5, as per 5.3.2c, street-facing building facade, the proposed facade is poorly articulated and lacks detail as prescribed in the policy. Number 6, the style and colour of the proposed fence is inconsistent with permissible fences under the existing policy. 7, most north-facing windows have unacceptable sight lines into the neighbouring properties and no treatment has been shown. It is unclear south-facing windows, just a point there. Number 8, the front-facing windows do not conform with street-facing aluminium windows requiring, as per the policy, single double-sash casement and awning, as point 5.4.2d of the current policy. 9, the Fielder's King Clip style of roofing is an unlisted roofing material within the current policy and is therefore unacceptable as a proposed roofing material. Number 10, as per 6.4.2c of the existing policy, Colorbond Monument is a dark colour that is not acceptable under the current provisions for a roof. And 11, additionally, the roof colour should not be supported in terms of the localised heat sink effect it will have.
Are they all your reasons?
They're all my reasons as well. Thank you. Just looking for a second.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howlett, is there anyone against? Do you wish to debate it?
No.
No one wishes to debate it? Then I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour of Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson. That's 7. The motion fails.
I'm against.
Thank you. Thank you. And those against, I can ask you to raise your hands, which is Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch. So that motion is lost.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation, although I don't agree I should be able to do it. You accept that in previous council meetings.
Yes, I thought you'd foreshadowed it earlier, Councillor Johnson, about moving the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, I did, Mr Mayor, but I have to refer to Councillor Bowman to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman's foreshadowed the officer's recommendation. You second that, Councillor Zanino. Is there anyone against?
I am.
You wish to debate it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman, you have 3 minutes.
I'll just talk really loud.
Try now.
Mr Mayor, we've talked about this one. There's been enough debate on it. I don't need to say anything more on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Zanino as the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think that as a fallback, at least the applicants, if they decide to accept the officer's recommendation and move the building 1.5 metres back, at least they can go ahead and have their application approved and they can build a house. So I'm supportive.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Kiley.
Councillors, I just want to reiterate the point. We either stand by the policies we have or we throw them out. We've just spent a lot of money through Element, doing consultation with the community over a long period of time, a lot of staff time involved, a lot of money in staff time to come to get a draft policy, and Councillor Johnson recommended that go out, and that was approved by pretty well most of you sitting here tonight. We either support the policy, we stand by the people in Guildford who the majority of people who've gone to Guildford because it is a heritage area, because they want to live in a heritage area, because it's important to the majority of people in Guildford. The more we protect Guildford, the more we get people wanting to come in and do whatever they like. Now, this is we need to support the draft policy. We need to strengthen Guildford, not only for those people who live there, but for people who want to build there and will build there in the future. It's for their benefit as well that we have a consistent policy and we apply it consistently. I encourage you not to go with the officer's recommendation in this respect. Leave it hanging for another week. And don't support it, please. Councillor Bowman said at another meeting that he doesn't know much about heritage. Well, it's hugely relevant, absolutely relevant. This is something that I...
Okay, what's your point of order? Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Councillor Kiley is not the deciding member. I've moved a point of order, and my understanding is under our meeting procedure local law. You actually rule on that, not Councillor Kiley.
Well, I didn't hear you say a point of order. You did the second time, and I called you a point of order. And if I don't know whether you said it or not, Councillor Bowman, whether you... No, he said it on another occasion. You said you didn't know a lot about heritage. I don't know whether that was said, so I can't make a ruling. Councillor Kiley, if you just keep your comments respectful to all other councillors and continue, please.
My comment was purely factual, Mayor, thank you. I just want to raise Councillor Richardson's point. There are a lot of people in Guildford who have put a lot of time and effort into ensuring that Guildford is preserved for the future, for the benefit of all, for those who move in there as well. Approving developments like this over time diminish the value of Guildford. It is a great development. It's a great house, and with changes, it can be approved. You're already permitting one approval for the CEO to be undertaken. We can look at the colour of the cladding that's being used there as well. Please do not support the officer's recommendation in this respect. Support the people of Guildford as you have supported other areas. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker for the motion. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Howlett.
Just to reiterate that there's really no point having a Guildford heritage planning policy if we don't stick to it. It is a very unique suburb, very historical. We've got a local planning guide, we just need to adhere to it and follow.
Any other speakers? Councillor McCulloch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, This item was in relevance to the setbacks. Councillors, this proposal is entirely compliant with the overarching planning framework. It is complying with the Guildford Conservation Precinct design guidelines and the residential design codes. It is compliant.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Henderson.
Just to add one other point, and that is that, councillors, I'm hearing a lot about draft policy. Well, when you talk about draft policy and you go to SAT are going to say, well, it's draft, it's not actually policy. So you can talk about draft all day until it becomes policy. So it complies, and I think we should approve it.
Any other speakers, councillors?
Point of order on that one, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind.
What's your point of order, councillor?
Under the SAT Act, any draft policy put out for consultation for council is an acceptable defence within the SAT hearing, draft or current. It can be considered under the SAT Act.
Thank you. No other speakers for or against? Then I'll ask you to take the chair for a moment. Thank you, Councillor Congdon. Councillors, I'll support the officer's recommendation. As I said in my earlier debate, this is all about the setback. Don't worry about your interpretation of the type of the building. And I'm going to read from the key issues. It's the second last paragraph. It says, a revised application with a re-siting of the proposed dwelling to achieve a minimum setback of 5.5 metres would be considered to be fully compliant with the Guildford Conservation Precinct policy. That's what it's about. It's about the setback. It's not the building, the materials, the size, the shape. It's about the setback, and I can support the officer's recommendation. I'll now ask Councillor Bowman for his right of reply. Thank you, and thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, if I take the technical view of the meeting procedure local law, I've got really nothing to reply because no new information has come about. I've just heard for the last 15 minutes the same argument, and as such, Mr Mayor, I'm happy for you now to put the item.
Thank you. I'm now putting the motion to the vote. Those in favour? I have Councillor Jones, Councillor Bowman, Councillor Congdon, myself, Councillor Parry, Councillor Knight, Councillor Henderson, Councillor Zanino, Councillor Henderson and Councillor McCulloch, which I believe is 8. Those against, if you can raise your hands, please. I have Councillor Podovnik, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Howlett, Councillor Kiley, Councillor Catalano, Councillor Knight and Councillor Richardson, which is 7. The motion is passed. Councillors, it's now just on 10:10. I'm advised that there's a couple of issues that we really need to deliberate and get done tonight, but I'll put that in your hands. Mr CEO, do you want to make comment? Thank you.
Yeah, if I can, Mr Mayor. The items that we consider as important ones for Council to deal with tonight, we have 5.3, the Altone Park lease, C3.1, the Community Care Services Review, and also additional confidential items around the land acquisitions in Stock Road. So we consider those to be important ones, Mr Mayor, that we would like some
And the ramifications if they're not dealt with tonight?
Mr Coaten? Just on your...
I might explain that behind closed doors, perhaps, but for Stock Road they are significant, and also the other land purchase as well in Stirling Crescent that Councillor Kiley's withdrawn.
So you're moving a motion to go behind closed doors? Councillor Parry, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Bowman, is there anyone against? What's your question, Councillor?
Planning items are just as important.
Thank you. If I can thank members in the public gallery and ask you to leave the... Well, is there anyone against going behind closed doors? Being no one against, I declare it carried. It's a little bit difficult.